In the misty rose garden of Langley Manor, a bride vanishes on her wedding night, leaving a torn veil and a trail of secrets. Hercule Poirot unravels a deadly web of love, greed, and betrayal. Hidden passages, a staged murder, a blood-stained glove, and a sinister plot to steal a fortune. With every clue from a pearl to a cryptic letter, Poirot races to find Eleanor Langley before the killer strikes again, exposing a truth that shocks the heart of the estate. Chapter 1. The invitation to the grand wedding. Hercule Poirot adjusted his pristine white gloves, his keen eyes scanning the embossed invitation that lay upon the polished mahogany table in his London flat. The card was a work of art, its cream-colored parchment adorned with gold filigree and elegant calligraphy that announced the forthcoming union of Miss Eleanor Langley, heiress to the Langley fortune, and Mr. Victor Grayson, a gentleman of reputed charm and modest means. The wedding was to take place at Langley Manor, a sprawling estate nestled in the verdant hills of Kent, in precisely 1 week's time. Poirot's mustache twitched as he noted the date. Saturday, the 21st of June, 1925. The invitation had arrived that morning, delivered by a liveried messenger who had bowed with exaggerated deference before departing. Poirot, ever meticulous, had examined the envelope first, noting the wax seal bearing the Langley crest, a stag rampant beneath a crown of laurel. It was a symbol of old money, of a family whose lineage stretched back to the Norman conquest, or so their pride would have one believe. The invitation itself was addressed to Monsieur Hercule Poirot Esquire, and included a personal note from Lady Margaret Langley, Eleanor's mother, imploring his attendance. "Your presence would honor us," she had written in a hand that was firm, yet betrayed a hint of urgency. "We have heard of your remarkable talents, and Eleanor herself insists upon your company at this joyous occasion." Poirot set the invitation down and paced the room, his polished shoes clicking softly against the parquet floor. He was not a man given to social frivolities, and weddings, with their cacophony of laughter and champagne-fueled sentimentality, held little appeal. Yet, there was something in Lady Langley's words that piqued his curiosity. Why would the matriarch of one of England's wealthiest families seek the presence of a detective, albeit one of his renown, at her daughter's wedding? Was it mere flattery, or did she anticipate some trouble that required his little gray cells? He paused before the fireplace, where a small fire crackled despite the mild June weather. His reflection stared back at him from the gilded mirror above the mantel. A diminutive figure impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his mustache waxed to perfection, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. At 55, Poirot was at the height of his powers, his reputation as a solver of mysteries unmatched across Europe. He had unraveled the secrets of diplomats, disentangled the intrigues of aristocrats, and brought murderers to justice with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. Yet, each new case began with a single question. Why? Picking up the invitation, once more Poirot considered the Langley family. He had read of them in the society pages, though he paid little heed to such trifles. Eleanor Langley, the bride-to-be, was 23, a beauty by all accounts, with auburn hair and a smile that had reportedly captivated London's eligible bachelors. Her engagement to Victor Grayson had been announced only 3 months prior, a whirlwind romance that had set tongues wagging. Grayson, a man of 30, was described as dashing but enigmatic, his background shrouded in vagueness. Some whispered that he was a fortune hunter, drawn to Eleanor's inheritance like a moth to a flame. Others insisted his devotion was genuine, his love for Eleanor evident in every glance. Lady Margaret Langley, the formidable dowager, was the true power behind the family. Widowed a decade earlier when Sir Reginald Langley succumbed to a heart attack, she had managed the estate and its vast holdings with an iron hand. Her only child, Eleanor, was her pride, but also, Poirot suspected, her pawn. The Langley fortune, tied up in trusts and investments, was said to be worth millions, and Eleanor's marriage would trigger the release of a significant portion to her husband. Such wealth, Poirot knew, was a magnet for greed, envy, and betrayal. The invitation also mentioned other guests. Beatrice Langley, Eleanor's cousin, a spinster of 35 with a sharp tongue. Lionel Drake, Victor's best man and a childhood friend with a reputation for gambling. And Dr. Arthur Whitfield, the family physician, whose loyalty to Lady Langley was unwavering. There would be others, of course, distant relatives, society, friends, and local dignitaries, but these names stood out, each a potential piece in the puzzle Poirot was already constructing in his mind. He seated himself at his desk and penned a reply, accepting the invitation with his customary courtesy. As he sealed the envelope, he murmured to himself, "Mon ami, this wedding may prove more interesting than a mere exchange of vows." His intuition, honed by years of observation, whispered of secrets lurking beneath the surface, of motives hidden behind smiles. He would go to Langley Manor, not as a guest, but as Hercule Poirot, the man who saw what others did not. The journey to Kent was pleasant, the train gliding through fields of emerald green dotted with grazing sheep. Poirot, seated in a first-class compartment, sipped a tisane and reviewed the notes he had compiled on the Langley family. He had telephoned his friend Chief Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard, who had provided a few tidbits. Victor Grayson had no criminal record, but his finances were precarious. His income derived from sporadic investments. Beatrice Langley had once sued a cousin over a disputed inheritance, a case that had been settled out of court. Lady Langley was known for her philanthropy, but also for her ruthlessness in business dealings. As for Eleanor, she was an enigma, a young woman of intelligence and spirit, yet seemingly content to let her mother dictate her future. Arriving at the village of Ashford, Poirot was met by a chauffeured Rolls-Royce, its gleaming black exterior emblazoned with the Langley crest. The driver, a taciturn man named Harris, loaded Poirot's valise and drove toward the manor, the road winding through ancient oaks and rolling meadows. As they crested a hill, Langley Manor came into view, a magnificent edifice of red brick and ivy, its towers reaching toward a sky tinged with the gold of late afternoon. The manor was a testament to wealth and history, its facade adorned with gargoyles and stained glass windows that glowed like jewels. The driveway was lined with gravel, crunching beneath the car's tires as they approached the entrance, where a butler stood waiting. He was a tall, thin man, with a face as expressionless as a mask, his black suit immaculate. "Welcome, Monsieur Poirot," he intoned, bowing slightly. "I am Wentworth, the butler. Lady Langley awaits you in the drawing room." Poirot followed Wentworth through a grand hall, its walls hung with portraits of Langley ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow him. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers, vases of roses and lilies adorning every surface. The drawing room was no less impressive, its high ceiling painted with frescoes of cherubs and clouds, its furniture upholstered in damask and velvet. A fire roared in the marble fireplace, casting flickering shadows across the room. Lady Margaret Langley rose to greet him, a woman of 60 whose elegance belied her years. Her silver hair was swept into a chignon, her emerald green gown accentuating her commanding presence. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, extending a gloved hand, "we are honored by your presence. Eleanor will be delighted to meet you." "The honor is mine, madame," Poirot replied, bowing. "Your invitation was most gracious, and I look forward to the festivities." Lady Langley's smile was polite, but her eyes were assessing, as if weighing his worth. "You are too kind. Please, be seated. Tea will be served shortly." As Poirot settled into a plush armchair, the door opened to admit Eleanor Langley. She was indeed a vision, her auburn hair cascading in soft waves, her blue eyes bright with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She wore a simple day dress of pale yellow, yet its simplicity only enhanced her natural beauty. "Monsieur Poirot," she exclaimed, crossing the room to take his hand. "Mother told me you might come, but I scarcely dared hope. Your stories are legendary." Poirot smiled, charmed by her enthusiasm. "You flatter me, mademoiselle. But tell me, how does a young bride feel on the eve of her wedding?" Eleanor's smile faltered for a moment, so briefly that only Poirot noticed. "Oh, I'm thrilled, of course. Victor is everything I could wish for. But there's so much to do, and everyone has an opinion." She laughed, but it was a brittle sound. Lady Langley interjected, her tone smooth. Eleanor is simply overwhelmed by the preparations. It's a grand affair, you understand. 200 guests, an orchestra, a feast fit for royalty. Naturellement, Poirot said, nodding. And Monsieur Grayson? He is equally delighted, no doubt. He's been a rock, Eleanor said quickly. He's out riding now, but you'll meet him at dinner. The conversation turned to lighter matters, the weather, the beauty of the estate. But Poirot's mind was elsewhere. He observed the interplay between mother and daughter, the way Lady Langley's hand rested possessively on Eleanor's arm, the way Eleanor's eyes darted toward the window as if seeking escape. There was tension here, subtle but undeniable. Tea was served by a maid, a nervous girl who nearly spilled the milk. Poirot noted her trembling hands, her quick glance at Lady Langley before she retreated. The household, it seemed, was on edge, though whether from the impending wedding or something else he could not yet say. As the afternoon waned, other guests began to arrive. Beatrice Langley entered with a scowl, her dark hair pulled tightly back, her dress a severe shade of navy. "So this is the famous detective," she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. "I hope you're not here to stir up trouble." Chapter 2. The disappearance of the bride Hercule Poirot stood in the center of Eleanor Langley's bedroom, his sharp eyes scanning the disarray with the precision of a watchmaker. The morning light streamed through the heavy velvet curtains, casting long shadows across the room and illuminating the scene of chaos that had sent Langley Manor into a frenzy. The bed was unmade, its silk sheets tangled as if abandoned in haste. A single chair lay overturned near the dressing table, its delicate mahogany frame askew. The wedding dress, a confection of ivory lace and pearls, was draped carefully over a chaise longue, untouched by the disorder around it. On the dressing table, the note, "I cannot go through with it," lay like a silent accusation, its ink still fresh, the handwriting unmistakably Eleanor's. The maid who had discovered the scene, a young woman named Clara with wide, frightened eyes, hovered near the door, wringing her hands. Lady Margaret Langley stood beside her, her composure fractured, her silver hair slightly disheveled as she clutched a handkerchief. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and command, "you must find her. Eleanor would not simply vanish. Something terrible has happened, I know it." Poirot raised a hand, his gesture calming yet authoritative. "Madam, rest assured Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth. But first I must examine this room and I must have silence." His tone, though polite, brooked no argument. Lady Langley nodded, stepping back, while Clara stifled a sob. He began his inspection, moving with deliberate care. The room was large, befitting the heiress of Langley Manor, its walls adorned with pale blue wallpaper patterned with roses. A canopied bed dominated one side, flanked by nightstands holding a silver candelabra and a novel, The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. Its pages dog-eared. Poirot noted the book, his mind filing away the detail. A wardrobe stood open, revealing an array of gowns, but nothing appeared missing at first glance. The dressing table was cluttered with perfumes, a silver-backed hairbrush, and a jewelry box, its lid ajar. Poirot approached the note, studying it closely without touching it. The paper was of fine quality, matching the stationery he had seen in the drawing room. The ink was black, the penmanship hurried but clear. "I cannot go through with it," he murmured, his mustache twitching. The words suggested despair. Perhaps a decision to flee, but Poirot was not convinced. Eleanor had been nervous the previous evening, yes, but her demeanor had not struck him as that of a woman on the verge of abandoning her life. There was more here, a layer beneath the surface. He turned to the window, a tall sash affair with iron latches. It was locked from the inside, the glass unbroken. He tested the latches, finding them stiff but functional. No one had entered or exited this way, not without leaving traces. The door, too, had been locked, according to Clara, who had used her master key to enter when Eleanor failed to respond to her morning knock. Poirot examined the lock, a sturdy brass mechanism, and found no signs of tampering. "A locked room," he said softly, "and yet mademoiselle is gone." He knelt beside the overturned chair, noting a faint scuff mark on the polished floor. It was slight, barely visible, but to Poirot, it was as telling as a shout. The chair had been moved, perhaps knocked over in a moment of agitation, but not violently. He rose, his gaze sweeping the room once more, and paused at the fireplace. It was cold, the grate clean, but a small pile of ashes caught his eye. He crouched, using a handkerchief to collect a fragment. The paper was charred, but a single word was legible. Forgive. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A letter, burned in haste? By whom, and why? Clara, he said, turning to the maid. When did you last see Miss Eleanor? Last night, sir, Clara replied, her voice quavering. After dinner she came up here, said she had a headache and wanted to rest. I helped her out of her dress and left her at about 9 o'clock. And you heard nothing unusual during the night? No, sir, my room's down the hall and I slept soundly. I came this morning at 7, as usual, but she didn't answer. I thought she was sleeping, but when I knocked again at past, I got worried and used my key. Poirot nodded, dismissing her gently. He turned to Lady Langley. Madame, who else has access to this room? Only the household staff with master keys, Clara Wentworth and Mrs. Hargreaves, the housekeeper. And myself, of course. Eleanor's room is private. Even Victor respects her space. And the key? Where is it kept? Eleanor keeps it on her dressing table, but it's missing now. I checked. Poirot's eyes flicked to the dressing table, confirming the absence of a key. Très intéressant, he murmured. A missing key, a locked room, a cryptic note. This was no ordinary disappearance. He requested that the room be sealed and that no one enter until he gave permission. Lady Langley agreed, her face pale but resolute. As Poirot descended to the drawing room, the manor was abuzz with activity. Guests whispered in corners, servants moved with hurried steps, and the air was thick with tension. Victor Grayson stood by the fireplace, his handsome face drawn, his hands clenched. Monsieur Poirot, he said, striding forward. Have you found anything? Eleanor, where is she? Patience, monsieur, Poirot replied. I am only beginning. Tell me, when did you last see your fiancée? Last night at dinner. She wasn't herself, quiet, distracted. She left early, said she had a headache. I wanted to check on her, but Lady Langley said to let her rest. And you did not see her after? No. I went to bed around midnight. My room's in the west wing. I heard nothing until this morning, when Clara's scream woke the house. Poirot studied Victor, noting the strain in his voice, the way his eyes darted to the side. Grief or guilt? It was too early to tell. Merci, monsieur. I will speak with you again. He next sought out Beatrice Langley, who was pacing the terrace, her navy dress stark against the morning light. This is absurd, she snapped as Poirot approached. Eleanor's probably run off to London for some dramatic nonsense. She's always been flighty. Mademoiselle, you believe she left of her own accord? Of course, she's spoiled, always getting her way. Probably got cold feet about Victor and decided to make a scene. And yet, Poirot said, her room was locked, her key is missing, and a note suggests distress. This does not seem the act of a spoiled child. Beatrice shrugged, her lips tight. Maybe she staged it. Eleanor loves attention. Poirot let the comment pass, noting her bitterness. Beatrice's resentment of her cousin was palpable, but was it enough to drive her to action? He thanked her and moved on, seeking Lionel Drake, who was in the billiard room nursing a brandy despite the early hour. Rough morning, eh? Lionel said, his smile forced. Poor Eleanor. Hope she's just off sulking somewhere. Monsieur Drake, you are close to Monsieur Grayson. Did he mention any concerns about his fiancée? Not a word. Vic's mad about her. Been planning this wedding like it's the event of the century. He's gutted now, I can tell you. And you? When did you last see Mademoiselle? Dinner, same as everyone. I stayed up late playing cards with some of the guests. Didn't hear a thing until the commotion this morning. Poirot noted the slight tremor in Lionel's hand as he lifted his glass. Nerves? Or something more? He thanked him and sought Dr. Whitfield, who was in the library, poring over a medical journal. Terrible business, Monsieur Poirot. the doctor said, removing his spectacles. Eleanor's a fine girl. I can't imagine what's happened. Her health, monsieur, was it sound? Excellent. She was anxious about the wedding, naturally, but nothing serious. I saw her briefly after dinner, gave her a mild sedative for her headache. She took it and seemed calmer. A sedative? Poirot's interest sharpened. What kind, and how was it administered? A mild dose of chloral hydrate, in tablet form, Dr. Whitfield replied, his tone professional. I left it with her at around 9:15. It would have helped her sleep, nothing more. And you saw no signs of distress? She was upset, but I thought it was wedding jitters. She mentioned feeling overwhelmed by her mother's expectations. Poirot nodded, filing away the detail. A sedative could explain Eleanor's silence during the night, but not her disappearance. He thanked the doctor and returned to the drawing room, where Lady Langley had gathered the household. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steadier now. What have you learned? Little, but enough to begin, he replied. I must ask that everyone remain on the estate and that no one enters Eleanor's room. I will also need to speak with the staff and inspect the grounds. Lady Langley agreed, and Poirot set to work. He interviewed the housekeeper, Mrs. Hargreaves, a woman of 50 with a no-nonsense demeanor. She confirmed that the master keys were kept in a locked drawer in her office, and none were missing. Wentworth, the butler, reported no unusual activity. During the night, his account precise but unhelpful. The groundskeepers, stable hands, and other servants had seen nothing out of the ordinary. Poirot then walked the grounds, starting at the manor's rear, where Eleanor's room overlooked the rose garden. The earth beneath her window was undisturbed, with no footprints or signs of a ladder. He circled the manor, noting the exits. The main entrance, a service door, and a side door leading to the terrace. All were locked at night, according to Wentworth, and the keys were accounted for. In the rose garden, Poirot paused, the scent of blooms heavy in the air. He examined the paths, the hedges, searching for any clue, a dropped handkerchief, a broken twig. Chapter 3. The shadow of secrets, Hercule Poirot stood on the terrace of Langley Manor, the morning sun casting a golden hue over the sprawling gardens, where dew still clung to the roses. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of jasmine that had lingered in his mind since finding Eleanor Langley's shawl. The manor, though grand, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the next revelation in the mystery of the missing bride. Eleanor's disappearance had shaken the household, and Poirot knew that the key to unraveling the puzzle lay in the secrets each guest and servant harbored. Today, he would probe deeper, peeling back the layers of polite facades to reveal the truth beneath. He returned to the drawing room where the household had gathered, their faces a mix of anxiety and suspicion. Lady Margaret Langley sat rigidly in an armchair, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes darting between the guests. Victor Grayson leaned against the mantel, his jaw set, his gaze fixed on the floor. Beatrice Langley paced near the window, her sharp features drawn with impatience. Lionel Drake slouched in a corner, nursing a cup of coffee, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. Dr. Arthur Whitfield stood by a bookshelf, his expression one of quiet concern, though Poirot noted the way his fingers fidgeted with his watch chain. The servants, Wentworth the butler, Mrs. Hargreaves the housekeeper, and Clara the maid, hovered at the edges, their presence almost invisible yet heavy with unspoken knowledge. Monsieur Poirot, Lady Langley said, her voice steady but strained. Have you made progress? Every moment Eleanor is missing feels like an eternity. Madame, progress is made by the careful arrangement of facts, Poirot replied, his tone calm yet authoritative. I have questions for each of you, and I ask for your honesty. The truth, it is like a delicate flower. It must be handled with care, but it cannot remain hidden. He began with Victor, whose apparent devotion to Eleanor had yet to convince Poirot of its sincerity. Monsieur Grayson, you say you last saw Mademoiselle at dinner, yet you did not check on her later, despite her distress. Why? Victor's eyes met Poirot's, a flash of defiance in them. Lady Langley advised against it. She said Eleanor needed rest and I trusted her judgment. Besides, I was preoccupied. Preoccupied? Poirot's eyebrows rose. With what, monsieur? Victor hesitated, then shrugged. I was discussing business with Lionel. We stayed up late in the billiard room. Nothing important, just investments. Lionel nodded quickly. Too quickly, Poirot thought. That's right, we were talking stocks, old chap. Lost track of time. Poirot made a mental note of the synchronized response, as if rehearsed. And you, Monsieur Drake? You saw nothing of Mademoiselle after dinner? Not a peep, Lionel said, sipping his coffee. She went upstairs, and that was that. I was with Victor until well past midnight. Poirot turned to Beatrice, whose pacing had stopped, her arms crossed tightly. Mademoiselle Langley, you believe your cousin fled of her own accord. Yet you offer no evidence for this. Have you reason to think she was unhappy? Beatrice's lips curled into a sneer. Eleanor's always been dramatic. She's got everything. Money, beauty, a fiancé who dotes on her. If she's run off, it's because she's bored, or she wants to make Victor squirm. She's done it before, you know. Disappeared for a day or two to visit friends in London without telling anyone. Before? Poirot's interest sharpened. When was this? Oh, last summer, Beatrice said, waving a hand. She vanished for a weekend, came back with some story about a friend's yacht. Mother was furious, but Eleanor laughed it. Off, she's reckless like that. Lady Langley's face tightened. That was different, Beatrice. Eleanor was younger then, and not engaged. She wouldn't do this now, not on the eve of her wedding. Poirot nodded, noting the discord between aunt and niece. He turned to Dr. Whitfield. Monsieur le Docteur, you gave Mademoiselle a sedative. Did she speak of anything troubling her, beyond wedding nerves? Dr. Whitfield adjusted his spectacles, his voice measured. She mentioned her mother's expectations, as I told you. She felt pressured, I suppose, but nothing specific. I left her at 9:15 and she seemed ready to rest. And the sedative, Poirot pressed. It was sufficient to make her sleep deeply. Oh yes, Dr. Whitfield said. Chloral hydrate, a standard dose. She would have slept through the night, undisturbed. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A deep sleep could explain why no one heard a struggle, but it also raised questions. Had someone taken advantage of her unconscious state? He dismissed the thought for now, turning to the servants. Clara, you said Mademoiselle was writing a letter. Did you see to whom it was addressed? Clara shook her head, her cheeks flushing. No, sir, she folded it quickly when I came in. I only saw her put it to the flame. And you, Wentworth, Mrs. Hargreaves, did either of you hear or see anything unusual after Mademoiselle retired? Wentworth's face remained impassive. Nothing, sir. The house was quiet. I locked the main doors at 10, as usual, and checked the windows. Mrs. Hargreaves nodded. I was in my office until 11, balancing the household accounts. I heard no disturbances. Poirot thanked them, his mind racing. The burned letter, the hidden passage, the pearl in the garden, the stranger at dawn. Each clue was a piece of a larger mosaic, but the pattern was elusive. He excused himself, announcing his intention to explore the manor further, and requested that no one leave the estate. His next stop was the library, a vast room lined with leather-bound volumes and heavy oak furniture. He had noticed Dr. Whitfield's presence there the previous day, and suspected it was a place where secrets might linger. He examined the desk, finding a ledger with household expenses, meticulously kept by Mrs. Hargreaves. A drawer contained letters, mostly business correspondence, but one caught his eye, a note in Lady Langley's hand, addressed to a solicitor in London, discussing the terms of Eleanor's trust. It confirmed what Poirot had learned. Upon marriage, Victor would gain control of a significant portion of the Langley fortune, provided the union was legally binding by midnight of the wedding day. The trust was a motive, Poirot mused. But for whom? Victor, certainly, but Beatrice, too, had a stake. If Eleanor did not marry, the fortune remained under Lady Langley's control, and Beatrice, as the closest relative, might benefit. He tucked the thought away, continuing his search. Behind a row of books, He found a small photograph. Faded, but clear. Eleanor, younger, laughing beside a man Poirot did not recognize. He was tall, with dark hair and a serious expression, his arm around her. The back bore an inscription, E&R, Brighton, 1923. Qui est-ce? Poirot murmured. A former suitor, perhaps. He pocketed the photograph, intending to ask Lady Langley about it later. He moved to the cellar, retracing the secret passage's exit. The door to the service entrance was, as he had found, unlocked, but he noticed something new. A faint smudge of mud on the threshold, fresh and slightly damp. It matched the soil from the rose garden, suggesting someone had passed through recently. He followed the trail outside, finding a single footprint, partially obscured by gravel, leading toward the stables. The stables were quiet, the horses restless in their stalls. Jem, the stable boy, was mucking out a stall, his face brightening at Poirot's approach. "Sir, you're back. Did you find Miss Eleanor?" "Not yet, mon jeune ami," Poirot said, his tone kind. "But you may help me. The man you saw at dawn. Describe him again, s'il vous plaît." Jem scratched his head. "Tall, like I said. Wore a dark cloak, maybe black or navy. He was near the gate, looking toward the manor. Moved quick when he saw me, like he didn't want to be noticed. And his face? Couldn't see it, sir. He had a hat, pulled low. But he walked funny, like he was limping." "A limp," Poirot noted. None of the guests had a limp, but it could be feigned. He thanked Jem and examined the ground near the gate, finding another trace of mud, identical to the cellars. The stranger had been here, perhaps watching, perhaps waiting. Returning. To the manor, Poirot sought out Lady Langley in her private study, a small room filled with family portraits and ledgers. She looked weary, her eyes red-rimmed. "Monsieur Poirot, have you news?" "Only questions, madame," he said, producing the photograph. "Who is this man with mademoiselle?" Lady Langley's face paled. "That's Robert Kendall, a friend of Eleanor's from 2 years ago. They met in Brighton during a holiday. He was a solicitor's clerk, charming but unsuitable. I forbade her to see him after she returned." "And why was he unsuitable?" "He had no prospects, no family of note. Eleanor was young, impressionable. I couldn't let her throw herself away on a nobody." Poirot noted the edge in her voice. "And did she obey?" "She was upset, but she agreed. She hasn't mentioned him since." "Why do you ask?" "A detail, madame. Nothing more." But Poirot's mind was alight. Robert Kendall, a name, a face, a possible motive. Had Eleanor rekindled contact with him, defying her mother? Was he the stranger at the gate? He next sought Victor, finding him in the conservatory staring at a blooming orchid. "Monsieur Grayson, a word. Do you know a man named Robert Kendall?" Victor's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "Kendall? Never heard of him. Why?" Poirot watched him closely. "A name from Mademoiselle's past. You are certain you know nothing?" "Positive," Victor said, but his voice was tight. "Eleanor's never mentioned him." Poirot let it pass, but the lie was evident. Victor knew something or suspected it. He thanked him and moved on. His next stop, the village of Ashford, a short walk from. Chapter 4. A Body in the Rose Garden. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the rose garden, the morning mist swirling around his polished shoes as he gazed at the grim scene before him. The tranquility of Langley Manor's grounds had been shattered by a groundskeeper's cry, a sound that had drawn Poirot and the household to this secluded corner of the estate. There, nestled among the thorny bushes, lay a body, a young woman, her face pale, her eyes closed as if in sleep. She wore a white veil, its delicate lace stained with dew and a faint smear of crimson, and a simple dress that clung to her form, in the damp air. The sight was chilling, a tableau of death framed by the vibrant blooms, and Poirot's heart sank as he considered the possibility that this was Eleanor Langley, the missing bride. The groundskeeper, a wiry man named Thomas, stood trembling a few paces away, his cap clutched in his hands. "Found her just now, sir," he stammered, his voice hoarse. "Was trimming the hedges and there she was, half hidden. Thought she was asleep at first, but she's gone, ain't she? Poirot raised a hand, his expression grave. Monsieur, do not touch anything. Stay where you are. He turned to the gathering crowd. Lady Margaret Langley, Victor Grayson, Beatrice Langley, Lionel Drake, Dr. Arthur Whitfield, and a handful of servants, their faces a mix of shock and dread. No one is to approach, he commanded, his voice cutting through the murmurs. This is now a matter for investigation. Lady Langley swayed, clutching Clara's arm for support. Eleanor, she whispered, her voice breaking. Is it my daughter? Poirot did not answer immediately. He stepped closer, careful to avoid disturbing the ground, and knelt beside the body. The woman was young, her features delicate, her auburn hair spilling from beneath the veil. At first glance she resembled Eleanor, but Poirot's keen eyes caught discrepancies. The nose was slightly broader, the jaw less refined. He lifted the veil gently, noting a small bruise on her temple, partially hidden by her hair. The crimson smear was blood, dried now, but fresh enough to suggest death within the past 12 hours. Her hands were folded across her chest, a pose too deliberate, and her dress, though white, was not the wedding gown from Eleanor's room. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, his mind racing. This was not Eleanor Langley, but the resemblance was striking, and the veil suggested a connection to the wedding. Was this a case of mistaken identity or something more sinister? He examined the ground around her, finding no footprints in the soft earth, only a faint disturbance in the grass, as if the body had been placed carefully. A single rose petal, crushed beneath her, caught his eye. Its red stark against her pale skin. Dr. Whitfield stepped forward, his medical bag in hand. Monsieur Poirot, may I examine her? I can confirm the cause of death. Poirot nodded, stepping back. Oui, monsieur, but touch only what is necessary. Every detail must be preserved. The doctor knelt, his movements precise. He checked her pulse, though it was clear she was beyond help, and examined the bruise. She's been dead since late last night, I'd wager, he said, his voice steady. The bruise suggests a blow to the head, possibly fatal, but I'd need to conduct a proper examination to be certain. No other obvious injuries. And her identity? Poirot asked, though he suspected the answer. Dr. Whitfield shook his head. She's not Eleanor. The features are similar, but this woman is older, perhaps 28. I don't recognize her. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Lady Langley sank onto a bench, her face ashen. Not Eleanor, she whispered, relief warring with horror. Then who is she, and where is my daughter? Victor's face was a mask of confusion, but Poirot noted the way his hands clenched, his knuckles white. Beatrice's eyes narrowed, her lips pursed as if suppressing a comment. Lionel stared at the body, his face pale, while Clara sobbed quietly, her apron pressed to her mouth. Poirot rose, addressing the group. This is a tragedy, and it complicates our search for Mademoiselle Langley. I must ask you all to return to the manor. Dr. Whitfield, please arrange for the body to be moved to a suitable place for examination, with care to preserve evidence. I will contact the authorities. As the crowd dispersed, Poirot lingered, his eyes scanning the garden. The rose bushes formed a natural screen, hiding the body from the manor's view, but the path leading to this spot was well trodden, suggesting frequent use. He followed it, noting a faint scuff mark on a stone, similar to the one in Eleanor's room. Near the edge of the garden, he found a second clue, a silver cigarette case half buried in the soil, its surface engraved with the initials LD, Lionel Drake. Poirot pocketed the case, his mind turning over possibilities. Had Lionel been here last night, or was the case planted to implicate him? The body's placement, the veil, the lack of struggle, all pointed to a staged scene designed to mislead. But to what end? Was it a warning, a distraction, or a cover for Eleanor's disappearance? He returned to the manor, where the atmosphere was thick with tension. In the drawing room, Lady Langley sat with a glass of brandy, her composure fraying. Monsieur Poirot, she said, who is that woman, and what does this mean for Eleanor? Madame, I do not yet know her identity, but I assure you it is connected to your daughter's absence. The veil, the timing, these are not coincidences. I will need your help to identify her." Lady Langley shook her head. "I've never seen her. She's not a guest, not a servant. Could she be someone from the village?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, though he doubted it. The woman's dress, though simple, was of fine quality, and her hands showed no signs of manual labor. She was no villager, but someone with means or connections to those who did. He sought out Victor next, finding him in the billiard room, staring at the green felt table. "Monsieur Grayson, you saw the body. Did you recognize her?" Victor shook his head, his eyes distant. "No. She looked like Eleanor at first, but no, I don't know her. What's happening, Poirot? Is Eleanor dead too?" "Non, monsieur. I believe mademoiselle is alive. But this death complicates matters. Tell me, did you walk in the rose garden last night?" Victor frowned. "No. I was in the billiard room with Lionel, as I told you. Why?" Poirot did not mention the cigarette case, instead noting Victor's quick denial. "A detail, monsieur. Nothing more." He next confronted Lionel, who was in the conservatory, pacing among the orchids. Poirot produced the cigarette case, holding it up. "Monsieur Drake, this was found in the rose garden near the body. It bears your initials." Lionel's eyes widened, his face flushing. "That's mine, but I didn't drop it there. I lost it days ago. Must have been at the races. Someone took it, planted it to frame me." "Vraiment?" Poirot's tone was skeptical. "And who would do such a thing?" "I don't know." Lionel ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I was with Victor all night. I didn't go near the garden. You've got to believe me." Poirot pocketed the case, saying nothing. Lionel's panic was genuine, but his story was too convenient. He moved on to Beatrice, who was in the library, flipping through a book with feigned indifference. "Mademoiselle, you were quick to dismiss Eleanor's disappearance as a stunt. What do you make of this death?" Beatrice closed the book with a snap. "It's awful, but it doesn't change my opinion. Eleanor's probably hiding somewhere, laughing at the chaos. That woman, whoever she is, must have gotten mixed up in something unrelated." "Unrelated?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. Body in a veil, resembling Mademoiselle, found on the day of her disappearance?" "You are not so naive, Mademoiselle." Beatrice shrugged, but her eyes flickered with unease. "Believe what you want. I don't know her." Poirot left her. His next stop the village police station, where he telephoned Chief Inspector Japp. "Mon ami," he said, "I have a murder at Langley Manor. A young woman, unidentified, found in the rose garden. I need your assistance and any information on Robert Kendall, the solicitor's clerk." Japp's voice crackled through the line. "Murder, eh? I'll be there by noon with a team. As for Kendall, I've got something. Last known in London. Working for a law firm, but he left 6 months ago. No current address, but I'll dig deeper. Merci, Japp, and hurry, s'il vous plaît." Poirot hung up, his mind on Kendall. The photograph, the stranger with a limp. Kendall was a piece of the puzzle, but how did he fit? Back at the manor, Dr. Whitfield had moved the body to a guest room, covering it with a sheet. Poirot joined him, examining the woman's belongings. A guy locket around her neck, containing a miniature portrait of a man too small to identify, and a ring on her left hand, engraved with a simple band. No papers, no name. "She was struck once," Dr. Whitfield said, pointing to the bruise. "A heavy object, perhaps a stone. Death was likely instantaneous." "And the veil?" Poirot asked. "It's not Eleanor's," Dr. Whitfield said. "Hers is still in her room with the dress. This one's similar, but cheaper. Machine-made lace, not handcrafted." A substitute, Poirot thought, meant to deceive. He thanked the doctor and returned to the rose garden, retracing his steps. Near the bench where he'd found the pearl, he noticed a faint indentation in the soil, as if something heavy had rested there briefly. A bag, perhaps, or a weapon. He marked the spot, intending to return with Japp. As noon approached, Japp arrived with 2 constables, his familiar bulldog face set in determination. "Blimey, Poirot, you don't half pick your cases. A missing bride and a dead woman. Let's see this body." Poirot led him to the guest room, briefing him on the way. Japp examined the woman, frowning. Not Eleanor, then. Any idea who? Chapter 5. The Clue of the Torn Veil. Hercule Poirot stood in the rose garden of Langley Manor, the late morning sun filtering through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the path where the body of the unknown woman had been found just hours before. The air was heavy with the scent of roses, but the beauty of the scene was marred by the memory of death. Chief Inspector Japp and his constables had cordoned off the area, their voices a low murmur as they searched for additional evidence. Poirot, however, was focused on a single detail that had caught his eye during his initial inspection: a torn piece of lace, snagged on a thorn at the edge of the garden, barely noticeable against the green. He crouched, his gloved fingers delicately extracting the fragment, and held it to the light. It was fine, machine-made, matching the veil found on the dead woman, but not the handcrafted lace of Eleanor Langley's wedding veil. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, his mustache twitching as he pocketed the fragment. This torn veil was no mere accident. It was a clue, a thread in the intricate tapestry of deception that surrounded Eleanor's disappearance and the murder in the rose garden. The veil on the body had been a deliberate misdirection, meant to suggest Eleanor's death. But this fragment, caught far from the scene, hinted at movement, perhaps a struggle or a hurried escape. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the timeline, the secret passage, the cigarette case, the stranger with a limp. And now this lace. The puzzle was growing more complex, but he thrived on complexity. He rejoined Japp, who was supervising the removal of the body to the village morgue. Anything new, Poirot? Japp asked, wiping his brow. This case is a right mess. Missing. Bride, dead woman, secret passages feels like one of your trickier ones. Oui, mon ami, Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. But every mess has a pattern, and I have found a clue. He showed Japp the lace fragment, explaining its significance. This veil was torn perhaps as the woman moved through the garden or as someone else did. It suggests she was not killed where she was found, or that another was present. Japp frowned, squinting at the lace. Moved, you think? That'd explain the lack of blood or footprints. But why the veil? Why make her look like Eleanor? To deceive, Poirot said simply. To make us believe Mademoiselle Langley is dead, or to divert attention from her true fate. We must identify this woman, Japp. Her connection to Robert, Kendall, and to the manor is the key. Japp nodded, barking orders to his men to search the garden for more fragments. Poirot, meanwhile, returned to the manor, his mind on the veil in Eleanor's room. He needed to confirm its condition, to ensure no piece was missing, and to understand why a substitute had been used. The locked room, the note, the passage, all pointed to a plan, but the murder suggested a plan gone awry, or a second agenda. In the mansion, now guarded by Eleanor Langley's bedroom, a constable, Poirot examined the wedding dress and veil, laid out as they had been the morning of her disappearance. The veil was intact, its handcrafted lace adorned with intricate tiny pearls that matched the one he'd found in the garden. He lifted it carefully, checking for tears or missing sections, but found none. Interessant, he murmured. Eleanor's veil had not been used in the garden, yet the pearl suggested her presence there. Had she been in the garden before vanishing, or had someone taken it to mislead him? He moved to the dressing table, searching for more clues. The jewelry box, still ajar, contained a pearl necklace, but one pearl was missing from its strand, identical to the one he'd in the garden. Poirot's pulse quickened. The pearl was Eleanor's, hers. But how had it ended up so far from her room? Had she dropped it in a moment of distress? Or had it been taken by someone else? He moved to the fireplace, where the ashes of the burned letter had been swept away, but the word forgive lingered in his memory. Clara had seen Eleanor burn a letter, but was it the only one? He tapped the hearth, searching for hidden compartments, and found a loose brick. Behind it was a small bundle of papers, tied with a ribbon. Poirot opened them carefully, revealing 3 letters, written in a masculine hand, addressed to my dearest E. The letters were from Robert Kendall, dated over the past 6 months, each more urgent than the last. The first spoke of rekindled love, recalling their time in Brighton and begging Eleanor to meet him. The second mentioned a plan, cryptic but insistent. We must act before the wedding or all is lost. The third was desperate, dated 2 days ago before the wedding. I am here at Ashford. Come to me, or I will come to you. Forgive me for what I must do. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Kendall had been in contact with Eleanor, and his presence in the village was no coincidence. Was he the stranger with the limp, or had someone else used his name? He pocketed the letters, intending to confront Lady Langley and Victor with them, but first he sought Clara, finding her in the servants' hall, her eyes red from crying. "A maid," he said gently. "Clara, you saw Mademoiselle burn a letter," she said. "Was it like these?" He showed her a corner of one, keeping the text hidden. Clara nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, sir, same paper, same ink. She was upset when she burned it, said something about no turning back. I didn't understand, but I left her to it." "And you heard nothing unusual?" Poirot asked. Clara shook her head. "No, sir, but I think—" "She was scared, sir. Not of the wedding, but of something else." He thanked her, his mind on the dead woman's telegram to Kendall for help. She had known him, perhaps loved him, and her death was tied to his plan. He sought Lady Langley next, finding her in her study, staring at a portrait of a young child as Eleanor. "Madame," he said, producing the letters. "Madame, these were hidden in your daughter's room from Robert Kendall. You said she had not contacted him. Was this true?" Lady Margaret's face paled, her voice trembling as she took the letters. I didn't know," she whispered, scanning them. "She promised me she'd forgotten him. Oh, my Eleanor, what have you done? Did you suspect she was unhappy with Monsieur? Poirot asked. Lady Langley shook, her head tears welling. She seemed content. Victor Grayson was charming, attentive. I thought it was nerves, nothing more. But Kendall, he was trouble. I should have watched her closer. Poirot noted her distress, but also her quick dismissal of Victor's role. He thanked her and sought Victor, who was in the drawing room pacing. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, holding up the letters. "You denied knowing Robert Kendall, yet Mademoiselle was in contact with him. Did you suspect she loved another?" Victor's face darkened, his fists clenching. "I told you I didn't know him. Eleanor never mentioned anyone else. If she was writing to him, she kept it from me. And yet," Poirot said, "you were preoccupied the night she vanished. With Monsieur Drake, you said. But perhaps you saw her, or someone else, in the garden." Victor's eyes flashed. "I was in the billiard room, as I said." "You're grasping at straws, Poirot." Poirot smiled thinly, letting the accusation hang. He moved on to Lionel, finding him in the billiard room, a brandy in hand. "Monsieur Drake, your cigarette case was found near a body, and now I find evidence of a plan involving Mademoiselle. Did you know of Kendall?" Lionel choked on his drink, coughing. "Kendall? Never heard of him. I told you my case was stolen. I'm not part of this, whatever it is." Poirot watched him closely, noting the sweat on his brow. Lionel was nervous, but was it guilt or fear? He thanked him, and sought Beatrice, who was in the conservatory pruning a rose. "Mademoiselle, you dismissed Mademoiselle's disappearance, yet now we have a murder. Did you know of her connection to Robert Kendall?" Beatrice's scissors paused, her eyes narrowing. "Kendall? That nobody from Brighton? Eleanor was over him years ago. If he's involved, it's her own fault for being foolish." "Foolish?" Poirot's tone was sharp. "Or betrayed? You stand to gain if Mademoiselle does not marry, no?" Beatrice laughed, a harsh sound. "You think I'd kill to keep the money? I don't need it that badly, Poirot. Eleanor's the fool, not me." Poirot left her, his mind on the torn veil. He returned to the garden where Japp's men had found another fragment of lace near the stables. The trail was leading somewhere, but where? He examined the stables, finding a horse with fresh mud on its hooves, suggesting a ride the previous night. Jem, the stable boy, confirmed it. "Someone took Daisy out after midnight, sir," he said. "Saddle was back by dawn, but I didn't see who. A night ride, a torn veil, a dead woman." Poirot's mind spun. He telegraphed Jap again, requesting a check on Kendall's associates, particularly women matching the victim's description. Back at the manor, he studied the locket from the body, its miniature portrait too small to identify, but the man's dark hair matched Kendall's in the Brighton photograph. As evening fell, Poirot gathered the household in the dining hall, the chandelier casting a somber glow. "A woman is dead," he said, his voice grave. "She wore a veil to resemble Mademoiselle Langley, but she was not her. I have found evidence of a plan involving Robert Kendall and a torn veil that suggests movement through the garden. Someone here knows more than they say." Lady Langley gasped. Victor's face hardened. Beatrice rolled her eyes and Lionel shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Whitfield remained calm, but Poirot noted his tightened grip on his watch chain. "I ask again," Poirot said. "If anyone knows, this woman or Kendall, speak now." Silence followed, heavy and oppressive. Poirot dismissed them, his eyes lingering on each. Chapter 6. The whisper of the past, Hercule Poirot, sat at the small desk in his guest room at Langley Manor, the flickering light of a single candle casting shadows across the walls. Outside, the night was still, the stars hidden behind a veil of clouds, much like the truth he sought. The discovery of the torn lace, the letters from Robert Kendall, and the unidentified woman's body in the rose garden had deepened the mystery of Eleanor Langley's disappearance. Each clue was a whisper from the past, a fragment of a story that Poirot was determined to piece together. His little gray cells were at work, sifting through the web of lies, motives, and secrets that enveloped the manor. He began by reviewing the letters from Kendall, spreading them across the desk. The paper was of good quality, the ink bold, the handwriting precise yet urgent. The first letter, dated 6 months prior, spoke of a love that had endured despite Lady Langley's disapproval. "My heart remains yours, E, as it was in Brighton," Kendall wrote. "I know you are promised to another, but I cannot believe your heart is his." The second, 3 months later, hinted at a plan. "We can be free, but it must be before the wedding. Trust me, and all will be well." The third, written just days ago, was a plea. "I am in Ashford, waiting. If you do not come, I will act. Alone. Forgive me, but I cannot lose you again." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Kendall's desperation was palpable, but his intentions were unclear. Had he planned to elope with Eleanor, or was his action something darker? The dead woman, with her telegram to Kendall, was a link, perhaps his accomplice or his victim. Poirot made a note to press Chief Inspector Japp for more on Kendall's associates, particularly women in London. He turned to the torn lace, now resting in a small envelope on the desk. Its machine-made pattern matched the veil on the body, not Eleanor's handcrafted one. The fragments, one near the body, another by the stables, suggested movement through the garden. But whose? The dead woman, fleeing or being dragged, or someone else, perhaps Eleanor herself, caught in the thorns as she escaped. The pearl from Eleanor's necklace, found near the bench, added to the puzzle. Had she been in the garden that night? Or was the pearl planted to mislead? Poirot's thoughts shifted to the secret passage, its well-oiled hinges and dusty steps a silent testament to recent use. The mud on the cellar threshold, matching the garden's soil, pointed to a connection between the manor and the rose garden. The horse, Daisy, taken out after midnight, suggested a journey, perhaps to meet Kendall, or to dispose of the body. The cigarette case with Lionel Drake's initials, too conveniently placed, screamed of a frame. But by whom? And why? He rose, pacing the room, his hands clasped behind his back. The manor was a house of secrets, its inhabitants each holding a piece of the truth. Lady Langley's denial of Eleanor's contact with Kendall was either ignorance or a lie. Victor Grayson's quick dismissal of Kendall's name betrayed knowledge or suspicion. Beatrice Langley's scorn for her cousin masked a deeper resentment, perhaps tied to the family fortune. Lionel's panic over the cigarette case was genuine, but his alibi with Victor was too neat. Dr. Whitfield's calm demeanor and precise answers raised Poirot's suspicions. His sedative had ensured Eleanor's silence that night, but was it merely medical care? A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Wentworth, the butler, his face impassive. Monsieur Poirot, Chief Inspector Japp has telephoned from the village. He requests your presence at the police station. Merci, Wentworth, Poirot said, donning his coat. I will go at once. The walk to Ashford was brisk, the night air sharp against his face. At the police station, Japp greeted him with a grim expression. Got something on your Kendall, fellow, he said, handing Poirot a file and a lead on the dead woman. Poirot opened the file, scanning the contents. Robert Kendall, aged 30, had worked as a solicitor's clerk in London until 6 months ago, when he resigned abruptly. His last known address was a boarding house in Bloomsbury, but he'd left 3 months prior, leaving no forwarding address. A note from Scotland Yard mentioned rumors of debts possibly tied to gambling, but no criminal record. The dead woman, however, was more intriguing. A photograph from the morgue matched a missing persons report from London. Clara Merton, 28, a typist, last seen a week ago. Her landlady reported her leaving with a man, tall, dark-haired, with a limp. Mon Dieu, Poirot said, his pulse quickening. Clara Merton. And the man, Kendall? Likely, Japp said. The limp matches Jem's description, and the telegram she sent was to Kendall's old office. We're checking if he picked it up. But here's the kicker. She was seen in Ashford 2 days ago at the Red Lion with a man who paid cash and left before dawn. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Clara Merton, not the maid Clara, but a stranger with a name that echoed in the Manor's halls. Her resemblance to Eleanor, her veil, her death, all pointed to a plan involving Kendall. Japp, we must find Kendall. He is either the mastermind or a pawn, but he knows where Mademoiselle Langley is. Japp agreed, sending a constable to telegraph London for more on Merton and Kendall. Poirot returned to the manor, his thoughts on Clara Merton. Her locket, with its miniature portrait, might hold Kendall's image, confirming their connection. He resolved to examine it again, but first, he needed to confront the household with this new information. In the drawing room, the guests were gathered, their faces tense under the chandelier's glow. Lady Langley sat rigidly, her hands clasped. Victor paced, his jaw set. Beatrice sipped a sherry, her eyes sharp. Lionel slumped in a chair, his face pale. Dr. Whitfield stood by the window, his expression unreadable. Poirot cleared his throat, commanding attention. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, we have a name for the woman in the rose garden, Clara Merton, from London. She was connected to Robert Kendall, who was in contact with Mademoiselle Langley. I believe she was killed. To mislead us or because she knew too much? I ask again, who here knew her or Kendall? A stunned silence followed. Lady Langley's face crumpled. Clara Merton? I've never heard of her. And Kendall? I told you Eleanor promised to forget him. Victor's eyes narrowed. You're saying this woman was part of some plot with Kendall? What about Eleanor? Is she with him? Perhaps, Poirot said, watching him closely. But I suspect Monsieur knows more than he admits. You denied knowing Kendall, yet your fiancée wrote to him. Victor flushed. I didn't know. She never told me about any letters. Beatrice snorted. Of course she didn't. Eleanor's always been secretive. If she's run off with this Kendall, good riddance. Enough, Beatrice, Lady Langley snapped. This is no time for your jealousy. Poirot turned to Lionel. Monsieur Drake, your cigarette case places you near the crime. Did you see Clara Merton or Kendall that night? Lionel shook his head, his voice shaking. No, I swear it. I was with Victor, like I said. Someone's trying to pin this on me. And you, monsieur? Poirot asked Dr. Whitfield. You were calm when you saw the body. Did you know Clara Merton? The doctor's eyes met Poirot's, steady. No, Monsieur Poirot. I've never heard the name, nor seen her before. Yesterday. Poirot noted the doctor's composure, too perfect perhaps. He dismissed the group, his eyes lingering on each face. Someone was lying, and the whisper of the past was growing louder. He sought the locket next, now stored with Japp's evidence, in the village. The constable retrieved it and Poirot opened it carefully. The miniature showed a man with dark hair, serious eyes, and a faint scar above his brow, matching the Brighton photograph of Kendall. C'est lui, Poirot murmured. Clara Merton had loved Kendall or been tied to him, and her death was no accident. Back at the manor, Poirot visited the stables, where Jem was brushing Daisy. Mon jeune ami, he said. The horse taken. Out that night, did you notice anything unusual in the saddlebag? Jem frowned, thinking. Now you mention it, sir, there was a bit of cloth caught in the strap when it came back. Looked like lace, but I didn't think much of it. Lace? Poirot's heart leapt. Show me. Jem led him to the tack room, where the saddle hung. A tiny shred of lace machine-made was snagged in the leather. It matched the veil fragments. Magnifique, Poirot said, pocketing it. The horse had carried someone through the garden, perhaps with the body or with Eleanor. He returned to the manor, seeking Clara, the maid. You saw a woman at the post office, he said. Was she alone, or with a man? Clara hesitated. She was alone, sir, but I saw a man outside waiting. Tall in a cloak. I didn't see his face, but he limped. Kendall, or his impersonator. Poirot thanked her and sought Wentworth, asking about the manor's history. The secret passage, he said. Was it known to the family? Wentworth's face remained impassive. Old stories, sir. The manor was built in the 17th century with passages for priests or smugglers. Few know them now, but Miss Eleanor was curious about the house's history. Curious. Poirot's interest sharpened. Did she explore them? I believe so, sir. She asked about the plans last year, said she was writing a family history. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. Eleanor had known the passage, perhaps used it to meet Kendall or to escape. He sought the library, searching for the manor's plans, and found a dusty tome with architectural drawings. The passage was marked, leading not only to the cellar but to a hidden exit in the woods beyond the estate. Mon Dieu. As evening fell, Poirot G. Chapter 7. The echoes of betrayal. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the woods beyond Langley Manor, the dawn light filtering through the ancient oaks, casting long shadows across the mossy ground. The air was damp, carrying the earthy scent of decay and the faint tang of pine. Chief Inspector Japp walked beside him, his boots crunching on fallen leaves, as they followed a narrow path toward the hidden exit of the secret passage Poirot had discovered in the manor's architectural plans. The passage, with its second exit in these woods, was a critical link in the mystery of Eleanor Langley's disappearance and the murder of Clara Merton. Poirot's mind was a whirl of clues: the torn lace, the pearl, the letters from Robert Kendall, the cigarette case, the horse ridden at midnight. Each was an echo of betrayal, a fragment of a truth that lay just beyond his grasp. Blimey, Poirot, Japp said, puffing slightly as they climbed a gentle rise. This place feels like a haunted forest. You sure this passage comes out here? Oui, mon ami, Poirot replied, his eyes scanning the undergrowth. The plans were clear. A concealed door built for smugglers or priests in centuries past. If Mademoiselle Langley used it, or was taken through it, we will find traces. They reached a small clearing, where a gnarled oak stood beside a rocky outcrop. Poirot knelt, examining the base of the rock, his gloved fingers probing for a mechanism. A faint click rewarded his efforts, and a section of the outcrop swung inward, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. The air within was stale, but a faint breeze suggested recent use. Poirot produced his pocket torch, its beam illuminating cobwebs and damp stone walls. After you, Japp said, his tone half joking. Poirot smiled thinly. Non, monsieur. We go together. They entered, the passage barely wide enough for two. The tunnel sloped downward, its steps worn smooth by time, and after a few minutes they emerged into the manor's cellar, near the service entrance where Poirot had found the mud smudge. The door's hinges were oiled, as he'd noted before, and a faint scuff mark on the floor matched the one in Eleanor's room. "Someone's been through here," Japp said, pointing to a fresh scratch on the door frame. "Could be your Kendall fellow, or whoever took the girl. Or Mademoiselle herself," Poirot murmured. He retraced their steps to the woods, searching the clearing for clues. Near the oak he found a broken twig, its sap still fresh and a single thread of white silk caught on a thorn. He held it up, its sheen matching Eleanor's wedding dress. "Mon Dieu," he said softly. "She was here, or someone wore her dress." Japp frowned. "You think she made it this far? Or was she carried?" "That is the question," Poirot said, pocketing the thread. He examined the ground, finding a faint footprint, partially obscured by leaves, leading toward a dirt track that wound through the woods. The track was rutted, suggesting occasional use by carts or horses, and a fresh hoofprint matched Daisy's, from the stables. "The horse," Poirot said. "It came this way, perhaps with Mademoiselle, or with Clara Merton's body." They followed the track, emerging at a quiet lane that led to Ashford Village. Near the lane's edge, Poirot spotted another clue, a small silver button engraved with a crest he didn't recognize. He tucked it away, his mind on the stranger with a limp, seen by Jem and the innkeeper. Was this button his, or another, plant like Lionel's cigarette case? Back at the manor, Poirot sought Jem in the stables. "Mon jeune ami," he said, showing the button. "Have you seen this crest before, perhaps on a guest's coat?" Jem squinted, then shook his head. "No, sir, but it looks fancy, like something a toff would wear. None of the gents here have buttons like that." Poirot thanked him, his suspicion growing. The button was out of place, perhaps dropped by Kendall or another outsider. He returned to the manor, where the household was gathered in the drawing room, their faces drawn with fatigue and fear. Lady Margaret Langley sat by the fire, her hands clasped tightly. Victor Grayson stood at the window, his jaw set. Beatrice Langley paced, her eyes sharp with irritation. Lionel Drake nursed a brandy, his hands unsteady. Dr. Arthur Whitfield sat calmly, his fingers tapping his watch chain. "Monsieur Poirot," Lady Langley said, her voice trembling. "Have you found Eleanor? This waiting is unbearable." "Madame, I have found a path," Poirot replied, his tone measured. "The secret passage leads to the woods, and I have evidence Mademoiselle was there, or someone in her dress. I also found this." He held up the button, watching their reactions. "Does anyone recognize this crest?" A collective silence followed. Lady Langley shook her head, her eyes puzzled. Victor's face remained impassive, but Poirot noted a flicker in his eyes. Beatrice snorted. "Looks like some nobleman's trinket, probably nothing." Lionel stared at the button, his face paling, while Dr. Whitfield's tapping paused briefly. "Interessant," Poirot said, pocketing the button. "I will ask again. Who here knows of the passage's exit in the woods?" "No one," Lady Langley said firmly. "Those passages are ancient history. Eleanor wouldn't know of them." "Yet she did," Poirot countered, revealing Wentworth's comment about Eleanor's interest in the manor's history. "She studied the plans, perhaps to escape or to meet someone." Victor's head snapped up. "You're saying she planned to run away with Kendall?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his eyes on Victor. "Or she was coerced. The letters suggest she was torn, no?" Victor's fists clenched. "If she was seeing him, I didn't know. She never said a word." Beatrice laughed harshly. "Of course, she didn't. Eleanor's a master at secrets. She's probably laughing at us all right now." "Enough, Beatrice," Lady Langley snapped. "This is no game." Poirot turned to Lionel. "Monsieur Drake, you were pale when you saw the button. Why?" Lionel swallowed, his voice shaky. "It reminded me of something, that's all. A friend in London, he had buttons like that. But I don't know anything about it, I swear. And, you, Monsieur le Docteur?" Poirot asked Whitfield. You paused when I showed the button. A memory, perhaps? Whitfield's eyes met Poirot's, steady. A coincidence, Monsieur Poirot. I've seen many crests in my practice, but this one means nothing to me. Poirot nodded, unconvinced. He dismissed the group, his mind on the button. He sought Wentworth, showing him the crest. This button, monsieur. Have you seen it on any guest or visitor? Wentworth studied it, his face impassive. I cannot say, sir. It resembles buttons worn by gentlemen of means, but I've not noticed it here. Poirot thanked him, returning to his room to compare the button to Clara, Merton's locket. The crest was different, but the craftsmanship suggested a similar origin. London, perhaps, or a family of note. He telegraphed Japp, requesting a check on the crest and any connections to Kendall or Merton. As noon approached, Japp arrived with news. Got something on Merton, he said, handing Poirot a report. She worked for a law firm in London, same one Kendall was at before he left. They were close, maybe more than friends. Her landlady said she was secretive lately, talking about a big plan that had set her up for life. Vraiment? Poirot's eyes gleamed. A plan with Kendall, perhaps to extort Mademoiselle Langley, or to replace her? Japp shrugged. Could be. We also traced the telegram. She sent it to Kendall's old office, but it was forwarded to a postbox in Ashford. Someone picked it up the day before the wedding. Kendall, Poirot said, his mind racing. He was here, planning with Merton, but something went wrong. She died, and Mademoiselle vanished. Japp nodded, his face grim. We're searching for Kendall, but he's slippery. Got a report of a man with a limp near the station yesterday, but he's gone now. Poirot thanked him, returning to the manor to re-examine Clara Merton's belongings. The locket's portrait was Kendall's, but the ring on her finger bore no inscription, only a simple band. He studied the veil fragments, noting their uniformity. Machine-made, cheap, but chosen to mimic Eleanor's. The lace in the saddle suggested a ride, perhaps to the woods, where the silk thread and button were found. He sought Clara, the maid, again, finding her in the kitchen. You saw the man with a limp, he said. Did he carry anything, a bag perhaps? Clara frowned, thinking. I don't recall, sir, but he was in a hurry, like he was scared. He kept looking over his shoulder. Poirot nodded, his suspicion of Kendall deepening. He visited the library, searching for more on the manor's history, and found a journal from the 18th century, mentioning the passage's use by a Langley ancestor to escape creditors. A note in Eleanor's hand tucked inside read, "The woods hold the key." Poirot's pulse quickened. Eleanor had known the exit, perhaps planned to use it. But for what? He sought Lady Langley, showing her the note. Madame, your daughter wrote this. Did she speak of the woods? Lady Langley shook her head, her eyes red-rimmed. No, but she loved walking there. Said it cleared her mind. Oh, Monsieur Poirot. Is she alive? I believe so, Poirot said, his tone firm. But she is in danger or hiding. The echoes of betrayal surround her. He next confronted Victor, finding him in the billiard room. Monsieur Grayson, you knew of Kendall, I think. Did you see him that night, perhaps in the woods? Victor's face hardened. I told you I was with Lionel. I didn't know Kendall and I didn't see him. And yet, Poirot said, your fiancée planned with him. Did you suspect her heart was elsewhere? Victor's eyes flashed. If I did, I'd have confronted her, not some stranger. You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. Chapter 8. The Veil of Truth. Hercule Poirot stood in the library of Langley Manor, the late afternoon sun streaming through the tall windows, casting golden beams across the rows of leather-bound books. The air was heavy with the scent of old, paper and polish, but the room's tranquility belied the storm of secrets swirling within the estate. The discovery of the secret passage's exit in the woods, the silk thread from Eleanor Langley's wedding dress, the silver button with its unfamiliar crest, and the blood-stained glove had brought Poirot closer to unraveling the mystery of Eleanor's disappearance and Clara Merton's murder. Yet the truth remained veiled, hidden behind the lies and half-truths of the manor's inhabitants. Today he would push harder, confronting each suspect with the weight of the evidence, for the echoes of betrayal were growing louder, and the veil of truth was within his grasp. Poirot began by reviewing his notes, spread across a mahogany table in the library's corner. The letters from Robert Kendall to Eleanor, found hidden in her room, spoke of a desperate love and a plan to act before the wedding. Clara Merton, identified as the woman in the rose garden, had been Kendall's associate, perhaps his lover, her telegram to him confirming their connection. The torn lace veil, the pearl from Eleanor's necklace, the cigarette case bearing Lionel Drake's initials, and the midnight ride on Daisy, all pointed to a complex scheme, but the motive, greed, love or revenge, remained elusive. The glove, stained with fresh blood, suggested Eleanor was alive but injured, perhaps fleeing through the woods. The silver button with its unknown crest hinted at an outsider, possibly Kendall or another player yet to be revealed. He rose, pacing the room, his hands clasped behind his back. The manor's inhabitants were a tapestry of motives. Lady Margaret Langley, desperate to protect her daughter's future and the family fortune. Victor Grayson, whose devotion to Eleanor masked a possible jealousy or betrayal. Beatrice Langley, whose resentment of her cousin's wealth was thinly veiled. Lionel Drake, whose panic over the cigarette case suggested guilt or fear, and Dr. Arthur Whitfield, whose calm demeanor and sedative raised questions of complicity. Each held a piece of the puzzle, and Poirot was determined to force the pieces together. His first step was to re-examine Clara Merton's belongings, now stored at the village police station under Chief Inspector Japp's care. Poirot walked to Ashford, the crisp air sharpening his senses. At the station, Japp greeted him with a weary grin. "Poirot, you're running me ragged. Got anything new on that button or the glove?" "Non, mon ami," Poirot replied, "but I hope to find answers in Mademoiselle Merton's effects. The locket, the ring, they may reveal more." Japp led him to a locked cabinet, retrieving the locket and ring. The locket's miniature portrait of Kendall was clear, but Poirot noticed a faint inscription inside, previously overlooked. "To see forever, R." The ring, a simple band, bore no marks, but its size suggested it was worn regularly, perhaps a token of affection. Poirot examined the locket's clasp, finding a tiny scrap of paper wedged inside, barely legible. Ashford, midnight 12th. The date was the night of Eleanor's disappearance, mon Dieu, Poirot murmured. Merton planned to meet Kendall here that night, but why the veil? Why her death? Japp scratched his chin. Maybe she was meant to impersonate Eleanor, but something went wrong. Kendall's debts. Could he have been after the Langley? Fortune? Perhaps, Poirot said, pocketing the scrap for further study. He thanked Japp and returned to the manor, his mind on the meeting at midnight. Had Merton been killed to silence her, or to stage a false death for Eleanor? The glove's blood suggested Eleanor's involvement, but as victim or accomplice. At the manor, Poirot sought Clara, the maid, finding her in the servants' hall, polishing silver. "Clara," he said gently, "the man with a limp you saw at the post office, did he carry a letter or package?" Clara paused, her brow furrowing. "I think so, sir. A small parcel, wrapped in brown paper. He tucked it under his cloak when he saw me looking." "Mercy," Poirot said, his pulse quickening. A parcel, perhaps containing the veil or something more incriminating. He sought Wentworth next, asking about visitors to the manor in the days before the wedding. "Any strangers, monsieur, perhaps delivering a package?" Wentworth's face remained impassive. "None that I recall, sir. All deliveries went through the kitchen, as usual." Poirot nodded, unconvinced. He visited the kitchen, questioning Mrs. Hargreaves, the housekeeper. "A parcel, madam. Did any arrive for Mademoiselle Langley or another?" Mrs. Hargreaves frowned, wiping her hands on her apron. "Now you mention it, sir, a small package came 2 days before the wedding, addressed to Miss Eleanor. I left it on her dressing table, as she asked." "Intéressant," Poirot said. "And its contents?" "I didn't see, sir." "She took it to her room straight away." Poirot thanked her, his mind racing. The parcel could have contained the machine-made veil or instructions from Kendall. He returned to Eleanor's room, now unguarded but locked, and used the key Lady Langley had provided. The dressing table was as he'd left it, but he searched again, finding a hidden drawer beneath the mirror. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded tightly, with a brief note in Eleanor's hand. I cannot. It is too much. Forgive me. Mon Dieu, Poirot whispered. Eleanor had refused Kendall's plan, but what was too much? Escape or something darker? The note, like the burned letter, spoke of forgiveness, a recurring theme that haunted him. He pocketed the note, intending to confront the household with it. His next stop was the stables, where Jem was mucking out a stall. Mon jeune ami, Poirot said, the horse taken that night. Did you notice any blood on the saddle or reins? Jem shook his head, then paused. Not blood, sir, but there was a smudge, like dirt or something sticky, on the saddlebag. I cleaned it off, thought it was mud. Sticky? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Like blood, perhaps, before it dried. Jem's face paled. Could have been, sir. I didn't think. Poirot patted his shoulder. You have helped, mon ami. The smudge, the glove's blood, Eleanor had been on that horse or near it injured. He returned to the manor, seeking Lady Langley in her study. Madame, he said, showing the note. This was in your daughter's room, addressed to Kendall. She refused his plan. Did you know she was so torn? Lady Langley's face crumpled, tears welling. No, Monsieur Poirot, she hid this from me. I thought she was happy with Victor, that Kendall was forgotten. Oh, Eleanor, why didn't you tell me? Perhaps she feared your disapproval, Poirot said gently, or she was protecting someone. Lady Langley shook her head, sobbing. Poirot thanked her, moving to Victor, whom he found in the billiard room, cue in hand. Monsieur Grayson, he said, holding up the note. Eleanor refused Kendall's plan, yet you claim no knowledge of him. Did you see her that night, perhaps arguing with another? Victor's face darkened, his grip tightening on the cue. I told you I was with Lionel. I didn't know about Kendall or any plan. If she was meeting him, she kept it from me. And yet, Poirot said, you were quick to deny his name. A lover's intuition, non? Victor slammed the cue. I'm no fool, Poirot. If she was unfaithful, I'd have known. You're wasting time. Poirot smiled thinly, leaving him. He sought Beatrice in the conservatory where she was arranging roses. Mademoiselle, Eleanor refused Kendall's plan. Did you know she was planning to leave? Beatrice's scissors paused, her eyes sharp. No, but it doesn't surprise me. Eleanor's always been flighty. If she was plotting with Kendall, she got what she deserved. Deserved? Poirot's tone was sharp. A harsh judgment, mademoiselle. You gain if she does not marry, no? Beatrice laughed, her voice cold. I don't need her money, Poirot. I'd rather see her humiliated than dead. Poirot noted her venom moving to Lionel, whom he found in the drawing room, staring at the fire. Monsieur Drake, your cigarette case, the button, both point to you. Did you see Eleanor or Clara Merton in the woods? Lionel's face paled, his hands shaking. No, I didn't. I was with Victor, I swear. Someone's setting me up and I don't know why. And this Harris? Poirot pressed. Your friend with similar buttons? Just a name, Lionel cried. I made it up, all right? I panicked. I don't know the button. Poirot's eyes narrowed. He had caught Lionel. In a lie. He sought Dr. Whitfield last, finding him in the library reading a medical journal. Monsieur, the sedative you gave mademoiselle, could it have been tampered with or dosed incorrectly? Whitfield's eyes met Poirot's. Calm. Impossible. Monsieur Poirot, I prepared it myself, a standard dose. She was asleep when I left her. And yet, Poirot said, she was gone by morning through the passage. Did you see anyone near her room that night? No, Whitfield said firmly. I retired after checking on her. Poirot nodded, his suspicion of the doctor growing. He returned to the woods with Jap, who had arrived with a report on the crest. It's from a minor family, the Harwoods, based in London, Jap said. No direct link to Kendall, but they're known for legal work. Could be a client of his. Intéressant, Poirot said. And Harris? No record of a Harris with that crest, Japp said. Lionel's lying or he's covering for someone. Poirot nodded, his mind on the glove. He re-examined it, noting the blood's pattern, smeared as if wiped from a wound. Eleanor was injured, he murmured, but not fatally, or more. Blood would remain. Japp's men searched the woods again, finding a discarded scarf, silk. Chapter 9. The Unraveling. Thread Hercule Poirot stood in the rose garden of Langley Manor, the early morning mist curling around the vibrant blooms, their petals glistening with dew. The garden, once a place of beauty, now bore the weight of Clara, Merton's murder, and the mystery of Eleanor Langley's disappearance. Poirot's polished shoes sank slightly into the soft earth as he retraced his steps, his mind a whirlwind of clues: the torn lace veil, the pearl from Eleanor's necklace, the blood-stained glove, the silk thread, the silver button with the Harwood crest, and the note in Eleanor's hand refusing Robert Kendall's plan. Each was a thread in a tapestry of deception, and today, Poirot was determined to pull the unraveling thread that would reveal the truth. The manor was quiet, its inhabitants restless under the shadow of suspicion. Chief Inspector Japp had returned to London overnight, chasing leads on Kendall and the Harwood family, but promised to return by noon with new information. Poirot, left to his own devices, began his day with a visit to the secret passages, exit in the woods, hoping to find further traces of Eleanor's flight or capture. The path was damp, the air heavy with the scent of pine and moss, and as he reached the hidden door beneath the oak, he noticed a fresh disturbance in the soil, a scuff mark, as if someone had stumbled recently. He knelt, his gloved fingers, sifting through the earth, and found a tiny bead, glass, not pearl, but similar in size to those on Eleanor's wedding veil. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, pocketing the bead. Was this from the machine-made veil worn by Clara Merton, or another? Clue entirely? He followed the path to the dirt track where the hoofprint of Daisy, the horse ridden at midnight, had been found. Near the track's edge, he spotted a faint glint, a hairpin, silver, with a delicate floral design. He picked it up, noting its elegance, unlike the practical pins used by the manor's servants. Eleanor's, perhaps, he whispered, adding it to his collection. Returning to the manor, Poirot sought Jem in the stables, showing him the hairpin. Mon jeune ami, have you seen this among Mademoiselle Langley's things or another's? Jem squinted, then nodded slowly. Looks like one Miss Eleanor used, sir. She wore it at dinner sometimes with her hair up. Fancy-like. Merci, Poirot said, his pulse quickening. The hairpin, like the silk thread and glove, placed Eleanor in the woods, alive but possibly in distress. He next visited the library, where he'd found the manor's plans and Eleanor's note about the woods. Searching the shelves, he discovered a small diary tucked behind a volume of Shakespeare, its pages filled with Eleanor's neat script. The entries were sporadic, but the last, dated the day before the wedding, read, I cannot do it. R asks too much, and V deserves better. I must end this, but how? The woods are my only hope. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Eleanor had planned to flee, but her refusal of Kendall's too much suggested a darker scheme, perhaps blackmail, or worse. The mention of Victor Grayson, her fiancé, hinted at guilt or loyalty, complicating her motives. He pocketed the diary, intending to confront Victor with it, but first he sought Clara, the maid, in the servants' hall. Clara, he said gently, showing the bead. This was in the woods. Does it resemble anything from Mademoiselle Merton's veil or another's? Clara frowned, studying the bead. It's like the ones on a shawl Miss Beatrice wore once, sir. Not a veil, but similar. I saw her in the garden a few days ago, adjusting it. Intéressant, Poirot said, his suspicion of Beatrice sharpening. Had she been in the woods, or was the bead another misdirection? He thanked Clara and sought Wentworth, the butler, asking about Beatrice's movements the night of Eleanor's disappearance. Miss Beatrice retired early, sir, Wentworth said, his face impassive. She complained of a headache after dinner and was not seen again until morning. Poirot nodded, unconvinced. Beatrice's scorn for Eleanor and her potential gain if the wedding failed made her a suspect. He next visited the rose garden, where Clara Merton's body had been found, and examined the spot where the torn lace had snagged. Nearby, he found a faint indentation in the soil, as if a heavy object had rested briefly, a stone perhaps used to strike Merton. He marked the spot, intending to show Japp later. His next stop was Eleanor's room, where he re-examined the dressing table. The hidden drawer where he'd found the note to Kendall was empty, but he noticed a faint scratch on the wood, as if something metal had been dragged across it. He compared it to the silver button's edge, finding a near match. "Vraiment," he murmured. Had the button been in Eleanor's room, dropped by Kendall or another? He searched the fireplace again, finding a tiny fragment of burned paper, missed before with a single word. "Harwood." "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered. The Harwood crest, now linked to a burned note, suggested a deeper connection to the Manor's secrets. He telegraphed Japp, urging him to hasten his inquiries into the Harwoods and any ties to Kendall or Merton. As noon approached, Japp arrived, his face grim. "Got something on the Harwoods," he said, handing Poirot a file. "Old family, minor nobility, with a law firm in London. Kendall worked for them briefly before joining Merton's firm. There's a son, Edward Harwood, 32, known for gambling debts. He was in Ashford last week, staying at a boarding house, not the Red Lion." "Edward Harwood," Poirot said, his mind racing. "The button's crest. His, perhaps?" "Could be," Japp said. "We're looking for him, but he's vanished. Also, Merton's landlady confirmed she was planning to marry up, maybe with Kendall, or someone richer." "Interessant," Poirot said. "Merton's veil, her resemblance to Eleanor. Perhaps she was to impersonate her with Harwood's help to secure the Langley fortune." Japp nodded. "And when it went wrong, she was killed. But where's Eleanor?" "That," Poirot said, "is what we must discover." He showed Japp the diary, hairpin, and bead explaining their significance. Eleanor was in the woods, injured, refusing Kendall's plan. Harwood's presence complicates things. Perhaps he, not Kendall, was the man with a limp. Japp's eyes widened. "Two men, both after the same prize? Blimey, Poirot, this is a tangle." "Oui, but the thread unravels," Poirot said. He sought Victor Grayson next, finding him in the billiard room, staring at the green felt. "Monsieur Grayson," he said, showing the diary entry. "Eleanor wrote of you, saying you deserved better. Did you know she planned to flee?" Victor's face paled, his hands clenching. "No, I didn't. She seemed nervous, but I thought it was the wedding. If she was leaving me for Kendall, why didn't she say?" "Perhaps she feared your reaction," Poirot said, watching him closely. "Or she was protecting you from a darker plan." Victor's eyes flashed. "What are you implying, Poirot?" "I loved her. I'd never hurt her." Poirot nodded, leaving him. He sought Beatrice in the conservatory where she was pruning roses. "Mademoiselle, a bead like those on your shawl was found in the woods. Were you there the night Mademoiselle vanished?" Beatrice's scissors paused, her eyes narrowing. "No, I wasn't. I was in my room, as Wentworth told you. That bead could be anyone's." "And yet," Poirot said, "you resent Eleanor's fortune. Did you know of Edward Harwood or his crest?" Beatrice's face stiffened. "Harwood? Never heard of him." "You're grasping, Poirot." Poirot noted her unease, moving to Lionel Drake, whom he found in the drawing room, nursing a brandy. "Monsieur Drake, you lied about Harris. Did you know Edward Harwood, perhaps through gambling?" Lionel's glass shook, his face pale. "No, I don't know any Harwood. I made up Harris because I was scared. That cigarette case, it's not mine, I swear." "Vraiment?" Poirot's tone was skeptical. "Yet it bears your initials." Lionel's voice cracked. "Someone's framing me, I tell you." Poirot sought Dr. Whitfield next, finding him in the library. "Monsieur, the sedative you gave Mademoiselle ensured her silence. Did you know Edward Harwood perhaps is a patient? Whitfield's eyes met Poirot's, calm. "No, Monsieur Poirot, I've no patience by that name. The sedative was standard, as I've said." "And the note mentioning Harwood?" Poirot pressed. "Burned, in the manor." Whitfield's fingers twitched. "I know nothing of it. I was in my room after checking on Eleanor." Poirot nodded, his suspicion of the doctor deepening. He returned to the rose garden with Japp, showing him the indentation. "A stone, perhaps used to kill Merton," he said. Japp's men searched, finding a smooth river rock, stained with dried blood, hidden in the bushes. "Blimey," Japp said. "The murder weapon. But whose hand held it?" "That," Poirot said, "is the question." He re-examined the glove, noting the blood smear, as if wiped from a shallow cut. "Eleanor was injured but alive," he murmured. "She fled, or was abandoned." Japp's men searched the woods again, finding a torn scrap of fabric. White, silk monogrammed EL. Poirot's heart leapt. "Another thread," he said, pocketing it. He telegraphed London, requesting more on Edward Harwood and any links to the manor. As evening fell, Poirot gathered the household in the dining hall, the chandelier casting a somber glow. "I have found a diary," he said, holding up Eleanor's. "Look." Mademoiselle planned to flee, refusing Kendall's plan, and mentioned the woods. "A bead, a hairpin, a glove, a scarf. All place her there, injured. Edward Harwood, with his crest, was in Ashford, linked to Kendall and Merton. Someone here knows the truth. Speak now." Lady Langley sobbed. Victor's face hardened. Beatrice scoffed. Lionel trembled, and Whitfield's eyes flickered. "No one?" Poirot said, his voice sharp. "Then the thread unravels and it—" He dismissed them, standing. Chapter 10. The shadow of the truth, Hercule Poirot, stood at the edge of Langley Manor's rose garden, the twilight casting long shadows across the dew-kissed blooms. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of roses mingled with the damp earth, a reminder of the grim discovery that had shattered the estate's tranquility. Clara Merton's body, veiled to resemble Eleanor Langley, and the trail of clues leading to Eleanor's disappearance. Poirot's mind was a mosaic of evidence: the torn lace veil, the pearl from Eleanor's necklace, the blood-stained glove, the silk thread, the silver button with the Harwood crest, the hairpin, the bead, the diary, and the burned note mentioning Harwood. Each was a shadow cast by the truth, and tonight, Poirot was determined to step into its light. The manor was a fortress of secrets, its inhabitants locked in a dance of deception. Chief Inspector Japp had promised new information on Edward Harwood and Robert Kendall by morning, but Poirot could not wait. The diary's final entry, Eleanor's refusal of Kendall's plan, her guilt toward Victor Grayson, and her hope in the woods, suggested she had fled, injured, but alive. The blood on the glove, the silk scarf monogrammed EL, and the hairpin placed her beyond the secret passage's exit. But the presence of Harwood's button and the murder weapon, a blood-stained stone, hinted at a larger conspiracy. Poirot's little gray cells were at their peak, weaving the threads into a pattern that would reveal the guilty. He began his evening by revisiting the secret passage, its hidden door in the woods now familiar. The oak's gnarled roots concealed the entrance, but Poirot noticed a fresh mark, a scratch on the bark, as if a metal object had grazed it. He examined it, finding a tiny sliver of silver, matching the button's sheen. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, pocketing the sliver. Had Harwood or another used the passage recently? He entered the tunnel, his torch illuminating the damp walls, and found a new clue: a scrap of cloth, dark wool, caught on a jutting stone. It was coarse, unlike Eleanor's silk, suggesting a man's coat, perhaps Kendall's or Harwood's. Emerging. In the manor's cellar, Poirot checked the door's hinges, still oiled, and noted a faint smudge of grease on the floor, as if someone had knelt there. He followed the passage to Eleanor's room, where the scuff mark on the floor remained, and searched again, focusing on the wardrobe. Behind a panel, he found a small leather pouch containing a key, unmarked but finely crafted, Interessant, he whispered. Was this to a safe, a lockbox, or another secret within the manor? He pocketed the key, intending to test it later. His next stop was the stables where Jem was feeding the horses. Mon jeune ami, Poirot said, showing the cloth scrap. Does this resemble anything worn by a guest or a stranger you saw? Jem frowned, studying the wool. Could be from a cloak, sir, like the man I saw at dawn, the one with the limp. It was dark, rough-like, not fancy. Merci, Poirot said, his suspicion of the limping man deepening. Was it Kendall, Harwood, or a third party? He returned to the manor, seeking Clara, the maid, in the servants' hall. Clara, he said, showing the key. Have you seen this, perhaps in Mademoiselle Langley's possessions, or another's? Clara shook her head, her eyes wide. No, sir, but it looks like the kind used for lockboxes in the study. Miss Eleanor sometimes worked there with Lady Langley's papers. Vraiment? Poirot's pulse quickened. He thanked her and sought Wentworth, asking about lockboxes in the study. Monsieur, is there a safe or box in the study locked with a key like this? Wentworth's face remained impassive. There is a lockbox, sir, for family documents. Lady Langley keeps the key, but Miss Eleanor had access for estate matters. Poirot nodded, his mind on the key. He visited the study, a grand room with oak panels and a large desk. Lady Langley was there, staring at a photograph of Eleanor. Madame, he said gently, showing the key. This was hidden in your daughter's room. Does it open the lockbox here? Lady Langley's face paled, her hands trembling. Yes, it's one of two. I have the other. Eleanor used it for financial records, but she never hid it. Why would she? Perhaps to protect something, Poirot said, his tone measured. May I see the box? She hesitated, then nodded, leading him to a concealed panel behind a bookshelf. The lockbox was small, iron, and unassuming. Poirot inserted the key, and it turned smoothly, revealing a bundle of papers and a small velvet pouch. The papers were financial, deeds, investments, and a draft of Eleanor's marriage settlement, naming Victor as beneficiary of a substantial trust. The pouch contained a single diamond earring, its mate missing, its brilliance matching Eleanor's jewelry. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured. The earring, like the pearl, suggested Eleanor's presence or manipulation. He scanned the papers, noting a recent amendment, dated a week before the wedding, reducing Beatrice's inheritance if Eleanor married. Madame, did Mademoiselle Beatrice know of this change? Lady Langley shook her head, tears welling. No, I didn't tell her. Eleanor insisted on the amendment, said it was fairer to Victor. Beatrice, she'd have been furious. Intéressant, Poirot said, pocketing the earring and amendment. Beatrice's motive, resentment over her reduced fortune, grew stronger. He thanked Lady Langley and sought Victor Grayson, finding him in the billiard room, his face drawn. Monsieur Grayson, Poirot said, showing the amendment. Eleanor altered her settlement to favor you, reducing Mademoiselle Beatrice's share. Did you know? Victor's eyes widened, his jaw tightening. No, she never told me. Why would she do that without saying? Perhaps to protect you, Poirot said, watching him closely. Or to provoke another. Did you see her in the study or the woods that night? Victor's fists clenched. I was with Lionel, as I've said. I didn't know about any of this, Poirot. You're digging too deep. Poirot smiled thinly, leaving him. He sought Beatrice Langley in the conservatory where she was arranging flowers. Mademoiselle, he said, showing the amendment. Your inheritance was reduced, favoring Monsieur Grayson, did you know? Beatrice's face froze, her eyes blazing. No, I didn't. That little schemer. She always played the saint, but she was stealing from me. Stealing? Poirot's tone was sharp. Or protecting her future? Were you in the woods, mademoiselle, perhaps with a shawl bearing beads? Beatrice's scissors clattered to the floor. I told you I was in my room. You're accusing me based on nothing. No, Poirot said, based on a bead and motive. He noted her panic, moving to Lionel Drake, whom he found in the drawing room, his brandy glass empty. Monsieur Drake, Poirot said, showing the cloth scrap. This was in the passage, like your cigarette case in the garden. Did you follow Mademoiselle Langley or another that night? Lionel's face paled, his hands shaking. No, I didn't. I was with Victor, I swear. That cloth, it's not mine. Someone's out to get me. And Edward Harwood? Poirot pressed. You lied about Harris? Did you know him? Lionel's voice cracked. No, I don't know any Harwood. I made up Harris, all right? I'm scared, Poirot. Poirot nodded, his suspicion of Lionel's fear genuine but his role unclear. He sought Dr. Arthur Whitfield next, finding him in the library, reading. Monsieur, the lockbox contained papers and an earring, hidden by Mademoiselle. Did you know of her financial plans or Harwood's presence? Whitfield's eyes met Poirot's calm. No, Monsieur Poirot. I was her doctor, not her confidant. I know nothing of Harwood or her finances. And the sedative? Poirot said. It ensured her silence, no? Perhaps too strong? Whitfield's fingers tightened on his book. Standard dose, as I've said. You're mistaken, monsieur. Poirot nodded, unconvinced. He returned to the rose garden where the blood-stained stone had been found and examined the surrounding bushes. A faint glint caught his eye. A second diamond earring, its mate to the one in the lockbox, half buried in the soil. Mon Dieu, he whispered, pocketing it. Eleanor's earrings, one in the study, one here. Had she been in the garden, or were they planted? He telegraphed Japp, reporting the earrings and cloth, urging haste on Harwood's whereabouts. As night fell, Japp arrived, his face grim. Harwood's been spotted, he said, handing Poirot a photograph. Boarding house in Ashford left yesterday. Matches the limp description and his coat had silver buttons. Also, Kendall's debts were tied to Harwood's gambling circle. Vraiment? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Harwood and Kendall, partners or rivals with Merton as their pawn. But who struck the blow? Japp shrugged. We're closing in. Got a lead on a cottage in the woods, rented under a false name. Could be where Eleanor's hiding, or held. Poirot's heart leapt. We must search it, mon ami. They gathered Japp's men and headed to the cottage, a mile from the manor, hidden by pines. The door was ajar, the interior dark. Poirot entered, his torch sweeping the room, finding signs of recent use. A half-eaten meal, a woman's coat, and a letter, unsealed, addressed to E. The letter in Kendall's hand read, I failed you, but I will make it right. Stay hidden. H is dangerous. Poirot's pulse raced. Eleanor was alive, hiding, and Harwood was a threat. He searched the coat, finding a handkerchief monogrammed, EL and a small vial labeled sedative. Mon Dieu, Poirot said. Whitfield's sedative or a copy. Eleanor was here, drugged perhaps. Japp's men searched outside, finding fresh tracks leading to a stream where they vanished. Back at the manor, Poirot gathered the household in the dining hall, the chandelier casting a somber glow. I have found earrings, he said, holding them up. 1 and 2. Chapter 11. The Light of Revelation. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand drawing room of Langley Manor, the morning sun casting a golden glow through the tall windows, illuminating the intricate chandelier that loomed over the gathered household. The air was thick with anticipation, the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers overshadowed by the weight of secrets that had plagued the estate for days. The discovery of Eleanor Langley's hidden key, the diamond earring, the financial papers, the amendment reducing Beatrice's inheritance, the wool cloth, the silver sliver, and the letter from Robert Kendall, warning of Edward Harwood's danger, had brought Poirot to the cusp of unraveling the mystery. The blood-stained glove, the silk scarf, the hairpin, the bead confirmed Eleanor was alive, injured and hiding, while Clara Merton's murder in the rose garden pointed to a conspiracy involving Kendall, Harwood, and perhaps someone within the manor. Today, Poirot would shine the light of revelation, exposing the guilty and finding Eleanor. He began by assembling the household: Lady Margaret Langley, Victor Grayson, Beatrice Langley, Lionel Drake, Dr. Arthur Whitfield, and Wentworth, the butler, in the drawing room. Their faces were a study in tension. Lady Langley's eyes red-rimmed, Victor's jaw set. Beatrice's lips pursed, Lionel's hands trembling, Whitfield's gaze steady, and Wentworth's demeanor impassive. Chief Inspector Japp stood by the door, his bulldog face grim, ready to act on Poirot's conclusions. The room was silent, save for the faint tick of a grandfather clock as Poirot stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice clear and commanding, "we stand at the precipice of truth. Mademoiselle, Eleanor Langley is missing and Mademoiselle Clara Merton is dead, her body staged to deceive. I have gathered evidence: a veil, a pearl, a glove, a scarf, a hairpin, a bead, a button, a stone, a key, an earring, papers, and letters, that weaves a tale of love, greed, and betrayal. Today I will reveal the guilty." A murmur rippled through the room, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing it. He began with the veil, holding up the torn lace fragment. This veil, machine-made, was worn by Clara Merton, resembling Mademoiselle Langley's, but not hers. It was torn in the garden, found near the stables and in the woods, suggesting movement. Merton was killed to mislead us or because she knew too much. He produced the pearl gleaming in his palm. This, from Mademoiselle Langley's necklace, was in the garden near a bench. It places her there or suggests a plant to confuse us. Next came the glove, its blood-stained stark. This, with Mademoiselle's monogram, bears fresh blood, indicating she was injured but alive, fleeing through the woods. The silk thread, scarf, hairpin, and bead followed, each displayed with precision. These, found beyond the secret passage, confirm Mademoiselle reached the woods, perhaps on the horse Daisy, ridden at midnight. The scarf, monogrammed, and the hairpin hers, suggest haste or struggle. He held up the silver button, its Harwood crest glinting. This drop near the track links Edward Harwood, a gambler with debts, to the manor. A sliver of silver, found on the passage's oak, matches it, placing him there. The wool cloth scrap came next. This, course from a man's cloak, was in the passage, worn by the limping stranger, Harwood or another. The blood-stained stone, the murder weapon, drew gasps. This killed Merton, hidden in the garden, struck by a hand we will name. The key, small and finely crafted, followed. This opened a lockbox in the study containing papers and an earring hidden by Mademoiselle. He displayed the earring, its diamond sparkling, and its mate from the garden. These, Mademoiselle's, one in the study, one near Merton's body, suggest her presence or manipulation. The financial papers and amendment were next. These show Mademoiselle favored Monsieur Grayson, reducing Mademoiselle Beatrice's inheritance, a motive for resentment. Finally, he produced the letters and diary. Kendall's letters to Mademoiselle speak of love and a plan, refused by her. Her diary reveals guilt toward Monsieur Grayson and hope in the woods. A letter found in a cottage warns of Harwood's danger, confirming Mademoiselle is alive, hiding. Poirot paused, his eyes scanning the room. Let us reconstruct. Mademoiselle Langley, torn between love for Kendall and duty to Monsieur Grayson, planned to flee, using the secret passage she knew from her studies. Kendall, with debts, sought her fortune, enlisting Merton to impersonate her, perhaps to fake her death or secure the trust. Harwood, tied to Kendall's debts, was his partner or rival, present in Ashford with his crested buttons. Lady Langley gasped, her hands clasped. Victor's face darkened, Beatrice's eyes narrowed. Lionel shifted uneasily, and Whitfield's fingers twitched. Poirot continued, undeterred. The night of the 12th, Mademoiselle took a sedative, given by Monsieur le Docteur, but woke, perhaps due to a weaker dose or her will. She wrote a note refusing Kendall and burned another mentioning Harwood. She fled through the passage, dropping a pearl, a hairpin, a scarf, and injuring herself, leaving blood on the glove. He turned to the garden. Merton, dressed as Mademoiselle, met Kendall or Harwood in the garden but was struck dead, her veil torn, her body staged. The stone hidden was the weapon, and the earring planted suggested Mademoiselle's presence. The horse ridden to the woods carried Mademoiselle or Merton's body, leaving lace in the saddle. Poirot's gaze sharpened. But who struck? The blow? Kendall to silence Merton? Harwood to seize control? Or someone here protecting or destroying Mademoiselle? He faced Beatrice. "Mademoiselle, your inheritance was cut, and a bead from your shawl was in the woods. Were you there seeking revenge?" Beatrice's face flushed, her voice sharp. "I was in my room," as Wentworth said. "That bead's nothing, and I didn't need her money." Poirot turned to Lionel. "Monsieur Drake, your cigarette case was in the garden and you lied about Harris. Did you see Merton or follow Mademoiselle?" Lionel's hands shook, his voice cracking. "No, I was with Victor. Someone planted that case, I swear." To Victor, Poirot said, "Monsieur Grayson, Mademoiselle felt guilt toward you, yet you deny knowing Kendall or Harwood. Did you confront her or another in the woods?" Victor's fists clenched, his eyes blazing. "I loved her, Poirot. I was with Lionel, not chasing shadows." Poirot faced Whitfield. "Monsieur le Docteur, your sedative ensured silence, but was it tampered with? A vial, found in the cottage, matches yours. Did you know Harwood?" Whitfield's eyes met Poirot's. Calm. "The sedative was standard, and I know no Harwood. That vial could be anyone's." Finally, Poirot addressed Lady Langley. "Madam, you hid Mademoiselle's contact with Kendall. Did you suspect her plan or protect another?" Lady Langley sobbed, her voice breaking. "I didn't know, Monsieur Poirot. I wanted her happy, not this." Poirot nodded, stepping back. "The truth lies in the cottage, where Mademoiselle hides. Harwood is the key, his buttons marking his path. But the murderer—" He paused, his eyes gleaming. "I know." Japp's men stirred, ready to move. Poirot led them to the cottage, a mile through the woods, its pine-shrouded walls dark in the morning light. The door was locked, but Poirot used the key from Eleanor's room, its fit perfect. Inside, the air was stale, but a faint sound, a sob, came from a back room. Poirot entered, finding Eleanor Langley, pale and trembling, a bandage on her arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Mademoiselle," he said gently, "you are safe. Tell me all." Eleanor's voice was hoarse, her words tumbling out. "Robert. He wanted me to run away, to fake my death with Clara's help. I refused, but he insisted, said Harwood would ruin us. That night I fled through the passage, but Clara was in the garden dressed as me. I saw someone strike her, a man tall, limping. I ran, cut my arm, and hid here. Robert found me, left the letter, but Harwood's men are close." Poirot's heart raced. "The man Kendall or Harwood?" "I couldn't see his face," she whispered. "But he wore a cloak, dark, like Robert's." Japp's men searched the cottage, finding a hidden trapdoor leading to a cellar. Below, Robert Kendall sat, bound and gagged, his face bruised. Japp freed him, and Kendall gasped, "Harwood. He betrayed me. He killed Clara, wanted the fortune himself. He's coming for Eleanor." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Where is Harwood?" Kendall pointed to the woods. "He has a camp near the stream. He's armed." Japp rallied his men, and they moved swiftly, Poirot at their side. Near the stream, they found Harwood's camp, a small fire smoldering. Edward Harwood, tall, limping, his coat missing a button, stood with a pistol, his face twisted with rage. "Stay back," he shouted, aiming at Poirot. "Monsieur Harwood," Poirot said calmly, "it is over. The button, the stone, the cloak. You killed Clara Merton, seeking Mademoiselle's fortune. Drop the weapon." Harwood laughed, his voice bitter. "You're clever, Poirot, but too late. Kendall's debts were mine to collect, and Eleanor's money was my prize. Clara was a fool, thought she'd marry me. She had to die." Japp's men circled, and Harwood fired, the shot grazing Poirot's arm. Japp tackled him, wrestling the pistol free, and Harwood was cuffed, his defiance crumbling. "You'll never prove it," he snarled. "Non," Poirot said, wincing. "The stone, your button, Kendall's testimony, and Mademoiselle's witness. It is enough." Back at the manor, Eleanor was reunited with Lady Langley, their embrace tearful. Victor approached, his face softened, but Eleanor shook her head. "I'm sorry, Victor, I can't marry you, not after this." Victor nodded, his eyes sad. "I understand. Benel." Chapter 12. The Final Thread. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the pine-shrouded clearing, the moon casting a pale glow over the woods surrounding Langley Manor. The air was crisp, heavy with the scent of damp earth and resin. As chief inspector, Japp's men fanned out, their lanterns flickering like fireflies in the darkness. The confrontation with Edward Harwood at his camp near the stream had ended in his capture, but the mystery of Eleanor Langley's disappearance and Clara Merton's murder was not yet fully resolved. Harwood's confession, his betrayal of Robert Kendall, his murder of Clara to seize Eleanor's fortune, had illuminated much, but shadows lingered. The blood-stained glove, the silk scarf, the diamond earrings, the Harwood-crested button, the wool cloth, the key, the financial papers, and Kendall's warning letter pointed to a complex web of deceit. Tonight, Poirot would pull the final thread, tying every clue to the truth and ensuring justice for all. The cottage where Eleanor had been found hiding was now secure, guarded by Japp's constables. Eleanor, pale and shaken, had been taken to the manor under medical care, her arm's shallow wound treated. Kendall, freed from Harwood's captivity, was in custody at Ashford's police station, his role as accomplice or victim still unclear. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the timeline. Eleanor's refusal of Kendall's plan, her flight through the secret passage, Clara's staged death in the rose garden, the horse Daisy's midnight ride, and Harwood's deadly ambition. The manor's inhabitants, Lady Margaret Langley, Victor Grayson, Beatrice Langley, Lionel Drake, Dr. Arthur Whitfield, each held secrets, and Poirot suspected one final revelation awaited. He began by returning to the cottage, its dark interior, now familiar. The letter from Kendall warning Eleanor of Harwood lay on the table, its ink smudged from her trembling hands. Poirot re-examined the room, his torch sweeping the corners, and found a faint mark on the floor, a scuff, as if a heavy object had been dragged. He followed it to the trapdoor where Kendall had been held, noting a splinter of wood caught in the hinge, stained with a dark substance. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, pocketing it. Was this blood, or something else? He instructed a constable to send it for analysis, suspecting it might link to Clara's murder or Eleanor's injury. Next, he searched the coat left in the cottage, monogrammed E.L. Inside a pocket, he found a small notebook, its pages filled with Eleanor's hurried scrawl. The entries detailed her growing fear of Kendall's insistence and Harwood's shadow. "R says we must act, but his plan terrifies me. H watches, always watches. I saw him in Ashford, his limp unmistakable. If I stay, I lose Victor. If I go, I lose myself." The final entry, dated the night of her disappearance, read, "I must run. The passage is my only chance. Forgive me, V." Poirot's pulse quickened. Eleanor's guilt toward Victor, her fear of Harwood, and her knowledge of the passage confirmed her plan to flee. But the notebook hinted at another detail: Harwood's presence in Ashford before the wedding, watching her. Had he coerced Kendall, or was their partnership mutual until greed fractured it? Poirot pocketed the notebook, intending to confront Kendall with it. He returned to the manor. The household gathered in the dining hall, their faces etched with exhaustion and dread. Lady Langley clutched a handkerchief. Victor stared at the floor. Beatrice sipped a sherry with forced nonchalance. Lionel fidgeted, and Whitfield's calm demeanor was strained. Japp stood by Poirot, his notebook open, ready to record the final revelations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Poirot began, his voice steady, "we have found Mademoiselle Langley alive but shaken, and Edward Harwood, her would-be captor, is in custody. He killed Clara Merton, seeking Mademoiselle's fortune, betraying his partner Robert Kendall, but the full truth requires one final thread to be pulled." He held up the notebook, its pages fluttering. "This, Mademoiselle's, reveals her fear of Kendall's plan and Harwood's menace. She fled through the secret passage, leaving a pearl, a glove, a scarf, a hairpin, and blood. Merton, dressed as Mademoiselle, was struck in the garden, her veil torn, her body staged with an earring to deceive us. He produced the key and earring. The key, hidden in Mademoiselle's room, opened a lockbox with papers favoring Monsieur Grayson and reducing Mademoiselle Beatrice's inheritance. The earrings, one in the study, one in the garden, were hers, perhaps planted by Harwood. The wool cloth and silver sliver followed. These, from the passage, mark Harwood's path, his cloak and button betraying him. The blood-stained stone came next, drawing gasps. This killed Merton hidden in the bushes wielded by Harwood. But the question remains. Was he alone, or did another aid him? He turned to Kendall's letter. Kendall warned Mademoiselle of Harwood, but his own role is murky. Did he plan with Harwood, or was he coerced? Poirot faced Lady Langley. Madam, you denied Mademoiselle's contact with Kendall, yet she hid her fear. Did you suspect her distress? Lady Langley's voice broke, tears falling. No, Monsieur Poirot. I thought her nerves were bridal, not this nightmare. I failed her. To Victor, Poirot said, Monsieur Grayson, Mademoiselle felt guilt toward you, yet you claim no knowledge of Kendall or Harwood. Did you see her that night, perhaps in the garden? Victor's eyes flashed, his voice low. I was with Lionel, as I've said. I loved her, Poirot. I'd have stopped her, not hurt her. Poirot turned to Beatrice. Mademoiselle, your inheritance was cut and a bead from your shawl was in the woods. Did you follow Mademoiselle, seeking to thwart her? Beatrice's glass clinked, her voice sharp. I was in my room. That bead's nothing, and I didn't care about her money enough to kill. To Lionel, Poirot said, Monsieur Drake, your cigarette case was in the garden, a frame perhaps. Did you know Harwood, or see him? Lionel's hands shook, his voice hoarse. No, I swear, someone took my case, planted it. I'm innocent. Finally, Poirot faced Whitfield. Monsieur le Docteur, your sedative vial was in the cottage, and Mademoiselle's dose allowed her to wake. Did you adjust it, or know Harwood? Whitfield's eyes narrowed, his calm cracking. The vial was given for nerves days before. The dose was standard, Monsieur Poirot. I know no Harwood. Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. Merci, but one final piece remains. He turned to Jap. Mon ami, take us to Kendall. At the police station, Kendall sat in a cell, his face haggard. Poirot showed him the notebook. Monsieur Kendall, Mademoiselle feared you and Harwood. You planned to fake her death, with Merton's help. But Harwood killed her. Were you complicit, or coerced? Kendall's head bowed, his voice low. Harwood. He held my debts, threatened me. I loved Eleanor, wanted to run away with her, but he twisted it. He said Clara would pose as Eleanor, we'd fake her death, and split the trust. I agreed, but I didn't know he'd kill her. When I saw Clara's body, I tried to protect Eleanor, hid her in the cottage, but Harwood found me, locked me up. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the limping man Mademoiselle saw, striking Merton? Kendall shook his head. Harwood. He limped from an old injury. I was in the woods waiting for Eleanor when it happened. Poirot nodded, satisfied. He returned to the manor, gathering the household once more. The final thread, he said, is Harwood's greed. He killed. Merton betrayed Kendall and hunted Mademoiselle. The cigarette case, a frame, was his, stolen from Monsieur Drake. The sedative, Monsieur le Docteur, was yours, but not tampered, only misjudged by Mademoiselle's will. Mademoiselle Beatrice, your bead was coincidence, dropped earlier. Monsieur Grayson, Madame Langley, you are innocent, though blind to Mademoiselle's pain. He paused, his voice softening. Mademoiselle is safe. Harwood is caught, and Kendall will face justice for his role. The light of truth shines, and the shadows are gone. Lady Langley sobbed, embracing Eleanor, who entered, supported by a constable. Victor stepped back, his face sad but resigned. Beatrice rolled her eyes. Lionel exhaled, and Whitfield's shoulders relaxed. Jap clapped Poirot's shoulder, grinning. Well done, Poirot. A tangle, but you sorted it. Poirot smiled, his mustache twitching. Oui, mon ami. The little gray cells, they never fail. He stood in the rose garden later, the moon high. The clues, veil, pearl, glove, scarf, hairpin, bead, button, stone, key, earring, papers, letters, notebook, laid to rest. Mademoiselle, he murmured, you are free. The truth was woven, and Hercule Poirot's work was done.